lane, this one day. Yawa, our dear DA. When to turn marrying a car way, and we tell Yaga. I mean, Yalan to one carry marrying us. Ama, the Lana Master Panko, Mago Pelale, Yente Lapo, a Solomon, the Mo Pelale, the Lapon, the Lawanga, do Montapine. Just something that the Alia Bangani before. Also, Balambella and what before. The next I saw that battle at Yadoyala. Yes, I from Bangani before. So, yes, something. As we yes, something. Yes, something. Then I'm going to answer that now. Yes, therefore. Doesn't anything be yet therefore. Therefore, your dear for. You believe your dear for. If you in a month will yell at a matter. Assume what ye in a good in a good in the urine. As far out here we are for latter pan, and let's do Haran. Latter pan, level bidding, any bidding, without we color our mother pan. Then the Yala color for that, the book with you, Yala table. Then we blah our mother pan. That's one so I can come and then we are color for a boat. My fellow day, they are Abangani before, and if I saw Abangani before, I don't know this do Lumco. I walk, I was so he's done before. Madeline, the sort of fool, and then sort of fool. So, Ajakojo, over to you.
Okay, Baba Kaba, you're up. Want to go ahead and get started. Appreciate everyone once again. If we can leave your mics on mute, if you're not presenting, we will go through, and Baba Kaba will go through it and give some groove and engagement, and then we'll go ahead and get started for today. Hopefully you can hear me well, and once again, welcome to the State of Emergency Global African Conference.
Greetings, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is an auspicious occasion where we look to be proactive in our approach and the things that we can do as African people amidst this crisis. This the latest crisis, as we know. We have always been in crisis ever since the first Africans were snatched away from the mother continent. We have an esteemed panel of people who are going to speak about 5 to 7 minutes apiece. We're going to get started right now. We're going to go to our very first presenters for today. Will be one of our conveners, Dr. Mama Mawiyah Kambon. She is a licensed African-centered psychologist in Raleigh, North Carolina, specializing in children, adults, adolescents, and families. She's the co-founder of ONIPA Psychological and Consulting Services and co-founder with her daughter of this platform, the Black Therapy Central Network, on blacktherapycentral.com, the BTC. She's the past president and life member of the Association of Black Psychologists, and she has been on the front lines for African people for quite some time. Also, you're going to be hearing from Baba Leonard Dunston. He's a graduate of Livingstone College and Hunter College. He's president emeritus of NABSW, the National Association of Black Social Workers, who on October 14th, 2005, convened 35 national black organizations along with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in response to Hurricane Katrina. He is the convener of the Black Family Summit, a board member of NCOBRA and IBW. Baba Dunston is a former New York City organizer for unions and a former current member of numerous other activist organizations, and he has lectured all throughout the Caribbean and Africa. And so we're going to go ahead and ask Mama Mawiyah to go ahead and get started, and thank you very much.
Greetings, family and community. We are certainly glad to be here. This is, as Baba Kaba has said, an auspicious occasion for us to assist our people in our collective and personal healing. And so today we have a very profound group of people to share with you. And we want to share things that we must know to be about healing. We are very much aware that healing occurs mentally, emotionally, and physically through health. But healing also occurs in many different ways. If we don't have our employment and economics together, we can't heal. If we are bombarded by media in a negative way, we can't heal. And so in the many different areas of our life, of ourself, we are going to today begin to talk about healing and share with you some of our knowledge and wisdom, as well as hear from you. And so there will be opportunities for you to tap in, and we will address the issues that you have. And before we continue, I'd like Baba Leonard, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you so much, Hotep. Ramadan Mubarak. I want to first of all begin by thanking Dr. Mawiyah and my dear beloved brother Kaba for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. I'm going to be as succinct as I possibly can because I realize that there are a number of other organizers on this call who will be making presentations. Thank you again, Sister Maria. I want to talk a little bit about an initiative that we're about to kick off in the New York City metropolitan area. It's a pilot, and it's called a 100 listening line, and it's primarily or exclusively for first responders. And we're defining first responders very, very broadly. Most folk talk about the nurses, doctors, and the like, but we always like to refer to the other first responders, such as those who are nurses, aides, janitors, and the like. What we have found, and I think everyone will agree that in watching the horrific things that are occurring in the New York City metropolitan area, first responders need an outlet. So what we are about to embark on within the next 5 to 10 days is a listening call number. And it will be manned by brothers and sisters who just have an interest in helping our community. They are not all just clinicians. The calls will be, again, like I said earlier, they're focused primarily on those who do the first line work. And we're in the process of recruiting listeners from the New York City metropolitan area, which naturally includes the 5 boroughs, Nassau, Suffolk, and Westchester counties, also the lower portion of Connecticut, and the metro Newark, New Jersey area. How this will work is that a person will call into the listening line, and if the listener determines that that person is in stress, meaning he or she will need another of intervention, maybe a clinician, that will have at his or her disposal a resource bank that can refer the callers to. That's a very basic and simple example of what we are attempting to do in the New York City metropolitan area, commencing, like I said earlier, within the next 5 to 10 days. Our next areas of concentration will be in New Orleans, Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta, the metropolitan D.C. area, which includes Northern Virginia, the Baltimore areas of Maryland, and then we will hopefully move to the Black Belt section of Alabama, such as Selma, Alabama, Montgomery, etc., and then to the rural areas of Mississippi. We have chosen those communities because oftentimes, especially the ones in the Black Belt area and the rural parts of Mississippi, tend to be ignored. We are recruiting potential listeners. You do not have to be a clinician, as I said earlier. So anyone who's interested in being a listener, please feel free to contact me at Leonard Dunston Leonard first _Dunston at yahoo.com, or you can call me at area code 919-724-6301. Thank you so much, Sister Mawiyah and Baba Kata.
Thank you, Baba, for that information, very succinct, and giving us some marching orders and some things that we can do to help our people. All right, well, in the meantime, if folks wanted to pose any questions, please feel free to do that. Raise your hand.
Yes.
Or
Baba
also
Kaba?
put it in the chat. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I was on mute. So, yes, in addition to that, we have many resources that we will be sharing throughout. One is a workbook that's being put out, done by Baba Wade Nobles, who is on here, through the Association of Black Psychologists, which we hope to put a link up today that people can use while they're, staying in place. And so that there are many resources that we would like to do. But before we move forward, we have a special, tribute to start off any event. And the purpose of this is for us to get back to our roots. And in so doing, we must honor those who walked before. We have online Brother Len Jeffries, and his computer went out. So he won't be able to say much, but what we want to do is honor him as an elder who for generations, and I'm talking about decades upon decades, who has done the work physically, personally, collectively for children and adults. And we want to honor him as a legacy for us to look forward to. Many of the people that you will see today, you can go online and read their bios, but collectively, Brother Len Jeffries, we want to honor you from BlackTherapyCentral.com. And thank you. Then our next section, of course, is on psychological emotional healing.
Okay, and I've already introduced the next two presenters, Dr. Jamila Codrington and Dr. Anthony Smith. They are going to be joining us now. If you're on the line, Dr. Jamila, could you greet the people, please? Or Dr. Smith, if either one are on, please greet the people and tell us a little bit about what you're doing to help our people.
Hotep, everybody.
Hotep.
We give thanks
from
Durham, North Carolina, Dr. Anthony Smith. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here and to share some words with everyone. We want to encourage people as we launch this Black Therapy Central Network to recognize that we have everything that we need to complete our own healing. We don't need to look outside of ourselves or other people to come and save us. We have exactly what we need. And so we need to recognize the strength that we have and lean on each other and pull together to take care of us. So we started the Black Therapy Central to do that. And we put together a program which we're going to talk about in more detail, 10 days of collective healing, which we want people to engage this process with us. And each day will have a different element associated with it, a different thing that we're focusing on for that day. And it'll be fun, and it'll be lively, and it'll be connecting, and it's an opportunity for us to really just come together and bond and heal ourselves. And we recognize the strength and the power that we have, and we want to keep moving that forward collectively. So we'll be saying more about that. We're going to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to jump in, so I don't want to belabor the point, but just recognize that healing comes from within, and we have the power to do that ourselves. Ashe.
Ashe, wonderful. And it looks like Dr. Jamila is here. I see her in the chat. She needs to be unmuted. So, I don't know if that's happened yet. Dr. Jamila, are you there? Can we hear you? Let's go ahead and speak, and we'll see if we can hear you. All right, so we're going to get ready for Dr. Jamila in just a moment, and we have a tech brother on hand, Brother Kwadwo. He's going to make sure that she's unmuted. Dr. Jamila Codrington, again, is going to be joining us as well. And just for those who don't remember, she's a licensed psychologist based in New York, specializing in children, adolescents, and families. She's the founder and CEO of Asili Services, designed to provide holistic and culturally relevant psychological intervention and consultation services that empower our communities. She is also a supervising psychologist, adjunct professor, past chapter president of the New York Association of Black Psychologists. So we are, Dr. Jamila, are you there?
Yes, I think I've been unmuted. Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear.
Okay, beautiful. Peace family, it's a pleasure to join you here today. I am in New York City, Brooklyn, New York, and I'm also honored to be a part of the Black Therapy Central Collective. And we have a host of powerhouses on this lineup, but I do want to just speak a little bit about our understanding as African-centered psychologists when it relates to this crisis that we're working towards now in terms of our relief and recovery. So as Baba Kaba said, we are no stranger to crises, right? We have been historically under attack from since we were in the motherland, and this is a familiar stench of understanding what it means to be grieving, to have collective trauma, and to have uncertainty about what it means to be in this this phase of preparing for the new normal. But one thing that is important to understand is that we have learned some lessons. We have learned some lessons about how the African psyche responds to crises. And so we want to reach back, you know, in typical Sankofa fashion, dig up those lessons and not assume that we have to reinvent the wheel, but we just have to figure out how to adapt what we already know to prepare ourselves in this COVID reality and building for the future. So we start with that basic premise. Essentially, what we know is that for people of African descent, when we have gone through, I'm speaking as an African here in the United States, when we've gone through multi-generational oppression, centuries of chattel slavery, institutionalized racism, we have engaged in a process of adaptive survival, you know, adaptive survival behaviors, and not all of them are healthy. Sometimes we self-destructive outlook, of oppression that are internalized, and we become sometimes mistrusting of others, feelings of suspicion. We can engage in this ongoing cycle of learned helplessness. And that's what I want to focus on just as we set the stage for this. Our primary goal is to reclaim...
Just a question about pronunciation. Doctor, is that Naika?
So we want to be able to reclaim our self-determination. And if there are three things that I could offer inside of this understanding of what it means to restore ourselves and restore the African psyche, the first comes from the top down, it's faith. So we understand that we are here, we've survived and thrived since the Ma'afa, but it's our birthright, right? Resilience is our birthright, but we have to be able to reconnect to stories of resilience, through culturally affirming media, through movies, documentaries, watching them with our families and inculcating ourselves with the conviction that we are not just socially engineered to survive, but we're here for a purpose, right? And so as Mama Marimba, our niece says, we have this asili, and we have a need to fulfill this birthright, right? And to fulfill the purpose. So, so yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is everyone hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, just checking in. So we have this understanding, right, that we're in this fight, but it's not just a physical one to stay healthy from corona. It's a spiritual battle of faith over fear. And it's also understanding that there's a psychological warfare that's a part of this. And we're all wrestling against these COVID-related statistics, right, about the death toll, and it's very demoralizing, and it's breaking our will. And so we have a psychological battle to sit with. And that is understanding that control and predictability is an illusion. It's an illusion. And it's just the fact that Corona and where we are in 2020 has now made this clear, that we've been living underneath the myth of certainty and control, and we cannot control anything outside of ourselves. So reclaiming the African psyche means letting go of the myth of predictability and control, which is a very Western framework, it's a very Western mindset, and restoring self-determination, restoring conviction and faith, and always decolonizing the African mind. And so we do that through reclaiming our traditional African healing practices. And from my perspective, that is by reclaiming the cultural arts. The cultural arts are oxygen. We have always used it. We've been masterful in times of crisis. During the Middle Passage, we were encouraged to play drums because it was a conduit for healing. and connecting with spirit. South Africa in the mines, they did boot dancing. You know, we have the spirituals, the Negro spirituals, quote unquote, where we survived through that connection with spirit that was given energy. It was activated through the arts. And so this is where we have an opportunity to infuse creativity inside of the crisis and use it as an opportunity for coping. And that is how we return to our African psyche and reclaim traditional African healing practices.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very powerful information. I especially like the fact that you mentioned that the perception and the narrative that's being shaped mostly by the media, and we're going to get into that a little bit later as well, because the media always call it mass psychology, a mass psychology tool, a weapon of mass destruction for African people. And so we have to be very careful with our media consumption as well, and some of the things that we take in. We're going to continue to move now down to our next presenter. And by the way, I was just told by our technical brother Kwadwo, to mention to the presenters that if you are not presenting, please turn off your cameras. We have a lot of Africans on here trying to get this information. And of course, as the limitations of technology can be, you know, that will interfere, the camera will interfere with other people being able to hear, being able to see, bandwidth, et cetera, et cetera. So just please be mindful that when you are not presenting, please turn off your cameras. You can keep your phones on, of course, but please turn off your cameras. Yes, Mama?
Yes, it's important.
Can't hear you, Mama. You're muted. Mama,
we have people throughout the world who are listening in. And so if you put on your cameras, we have people coming from the Gambia, from Ghana, from Haiti, from Canada, from Cote d'Ivoire. So your cameras will interfere with the bandwidth, and we do want all of our family around the world to hear.
Yes, indeed. What Mama said. All right, so we're going to move on now to our next person, Dr. Naika.
Baba, it might be good to take the psychological, because the next is the body, health and healing in that way. To get any questions that may occur toward Anthony or Jamila.
So we're going to open up for questions now. So if anyone has any questions, please put your name in the chat, and then once we acknowledge you. Then our tech will take you off of mute, and then you'll be able to speak. So go ahead and put your name in there, and we can get moving with the questions. And again, we thank everybody for being patient with us. Of course, this is an auspicious occasion. Lots and lots of folks are on. We can see we're pushing towards 800 people. So let's make sure that we govern ourselves accordingly. Until questions come in, I'm going to ask a question or two. And please unmute yourselves once you finish talking. I'm going to ask a question to some of the presenters that are presented thus far. We started off, I hope you all are still with us, Dr. Baba Leonard, who's a graduate of Livingstone College and has worked with Katrina, the Katrina situation. Of course, the Katrina situation was a very interesting one because no matter what the cause, it was still weaponized in terms of getting Africans out of property in New Orleans. And I wanted to ask you, Dr. Leonard, about, do you see any parallels here with this situation with COVID-19, and how can we protect ourselves from having a repeat of what happened with Katrina? If you're still there.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yes, there are parallels, and I'll go specifically to New Orleans. I've been on with the residents of New Orleans, and what they feel.
I'm sorry. Can you please turn up the master volume? I'm sorry.
You still can't hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay. Yeah, what I was saying is that the parallels are very apparent and obvious. When you look at what's happening in New Orleans, for example, and this is coming directly from the residents of New Orleans, these conversations I've had with them, The fact that they are now housed and schooled, not schooled, but rather housed in the Superdome, a number of them, as a result of this pandemic, that reminds them of the same situation that cropped up and occurred during Hurricane Katrina. So they're having flashbacks, if you will, of Katrina in this instance. That's the most classic example that I can offer. The same thing is somewhat similar, though, however, when Superstorm Sandy hit the New York City metropolitan area, especially the areas out in Canarsie, Coney Island, and Far Rockaway. Had conversations with, you just heard Sister, oh, geez, I'm blocking her name now.
Dr. Codrington.
Yes, and she worked very closely with us out, in those three areas. And again, while I live in North Carolina, I'm still in contact with a number of friends who are living in New York. They're seeing those similar parallels in terms of how they're responding to this trauma. It's all very exacting on the psyche. So that's my response to that. The same thing is true in sections of Chicago and Detroit. While they did not go through the same kind of issues in terms of the hurricane, they've had other parallels that hit them. The water crisis, for example, outside of, I think it's called Pembroke, Illinois, they've had similar kinds of experiences. So, yes, my brother, there are more than, I guess the best way to say it is that this is stirring up memories of other tragedies and traumas that have continuously hit our communities throughout the years.
Thank you very much. And so we're going to go on and move on now to our next presenters, Dr. Naika Apeakorang, there we go. Dr. Naika Apeakorang is a Brooklyn-based naturopath, acupuncturist, and herbalist with a mindfulness-centered practice focused on awakening the inner resilience that lies within each of us to transform our circumstances and manifest a vibrant life fueled by intention, purpose, and clarity. Dr. Naika uses an integrative wellness approach to help people heal from the inside out and from the core to the periphery by addressing the root cause of illness. Dr. Naika offers in-person and virtual holistic services for individuals and groups wanting to dive deep into radical and transformative wellness. Also, Dr. Bishara Wilson is a doctor of acupuncture and Asian medicine, women's health specialist, best-selling author and speaker. Over 20 years, for quite a while, dealing with New York sports acupuncture, In the past few months, he has successfully been helping numerous people around the country deal with coronavirus and its related signs right there in the epicenter there in New York City and symptoms using herbal medicine approach. He lives in Brooklyn with his wife, Dr. Danett Bean, and their son. And Dr. Danett is a doctor of acupuncture and Asian medicine, women's health specialist, best-selling author, and speaker. For close to 20 years, she has provided acupuncture and integrative medical services to underserved populations. She has numerous certifications, and she is based in Brooklyn, of course, and is a mother and wife. I just wanted to bring you all in. First of all, Dr. Naika, greetings, and would love to hear your presentation.
Hi, can you hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me today. I want to highlight the collective genius of our ancestors and the fact that we have always been able to connect to the healing elements in our landscape. Heal ourselves.
And I'm sorry, Dr. Naika, but I'm going to ask folks to please mute your microphones. We have a lot of background noise, so please mute your microphone. Please. We can hear your presenter. So everyone, please mute your microphone so that we can hear. All right, thank you, Dr. Naika. Please go ahead.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, I want to highlight the fact that our ancestors have known exactly what to use to heal us for centuries, whether it be cleansing waters or replenishing foods or healing plants. We have always known how to use the resources available to us. I believe that coronavirus has cracked the collective psyche and has shed some light on our systemic vulnerabilities and has awakened us to do some purging, some transmuting, and transformation. In my tribe, the Akan people of Ghana, we have a principle called Sankofa that Dr. Jamila talked about moments ago. It's the image of a bird looking to the past and flies confidently to our future. So I believe in this way we could restore the regenerative healing practices of our people. So I believe this is a time to connect to the earth's medicine and to use the tools that are available to us, mostly via kitchen medicine or via the plants that are available in our immediate neighborhood. So this could be plants like ginger and garlic or thyme or basil or parsley or nettle to make all of the healing tonics and elixirs that we, our families, and our communities need. 2, I believe it's time to look at self-care and community care as radical tools for resilience and healing. In the mainstream, it's kind of taught as, you know, bubble baths and other sort of luxurious practices that feel great and are wonderful. But I also believe that self-care at its core reminds ourselves and each other that we matter enough to be taken care of. So this could look like really good nutrition, rest, intentional movement, exercise, anything that reaffirms that we matter and in turn challenges the systemic oppression that shows us that we don't matter because we actually do. 3, it's incredibly important to mobilize community and to find spaces of connection, such as right now, what we're all doing today. I think the irony of the virus is that we are being asked to isolate and to separate, but for the sake of protecting each other, which is a beautiful thing. I think our ancestors knew very well that there was a power in the collective, and I think that we are all finding that right now. So I think on the other side of the virus, we are going to feel more connected to ourselves, to each other, to our planet, to our higher selves, and to everything and everyone around us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Appreciate that. And we're going to move on now to Dr. Bishara and Dr. Bean, who I recognize from my days at Hampton. How you doing?
That was you. What's up?
How you doing?
I got to connect you with the group, man.
Yeah, I know. I grew a little hair since then.
Yes. I thought that was you. Peace. So good to see you.
Peace. Good to see you as well. All right, so let's talk about what you all do, because y'all are a serious Black Power couple. So let's talk about what y'all do in the way of healing our people.
Dr. B.
All right, so peace everyone. Thank you for joining this afternoon. You know, we're dealing with a whole worldwide crisis. I don't know about everyone else, but I know when this first kind of came out, just dealing with so much deception in the world that our community has experienced, I didn't take it as seriously. You know, I was keeping tabs on it, researching, watching what was going on in China and Italy and Iran and other places in the world, and even the CDC and World Health Organization in terms of all of the stats and the numbers. And then I started getting calls from close friends of mine that friends and family was passing. Like a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, he lost like 2 family members in 1 week, and then another family member was in the hospital and still fighting, and other folks here and there. You know, folks are saying Black folks couldn't get it. I was looking at the stats in Africa and South America and even the islands, and it was kind of low compared to here. But as stuff really started touching close to home, you know, really started taking it seriously. When we look at this from a traditional standpoint, we're not even necessarily looking at it as COVID. And thank you. We're not even looking necessarily at it as coronavirus. We're just looking at each person individually and the signs and symptoms. When this first had come out, we saw in China that, you know, of course it was a respiratory condition. And even looking at some of the medical books, like coronavirus, first of all, isn't something new. Like SARS and MERS and a couple other things was coronavirus, and it affects the upper respiratory system and also the digestive system. And as part of this, we rebuilt our dispensary here. Online, we have over 80 herbs in stock available, and making like formulas for folks in terms of people that are showing some of the signs and symptoms here in terms of different things like headache, body aches, loss of smell, sore throat, and really dealing with the people directly, whether it's cold symptoms like I just mentioned, or flu symptoms, or even to pneumonia. And, it's definitely real and it's serious, and I'm sure a lot of folks here have been touched by it. From my experience with this, also with really working, sending formulas all over the U.S. for the past, couple of weeks, it seems like people can recover relatively quickly. It's like the body just needs a little bit of help with all of this. And, even if people have some pre-existing conditions, again, we give folks some things, and it seems like within 2 or 3 days, with the help of some herbs and other lifestyle things, people can begin to come to relatively quickly. In terms of actually, go ahead, baby. I'm talking a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was enjoying it. But I will echo what Dr. Wilson said, which is that when what we call in traditional Asian medicine, when our constitution is strong, then it's easier to be able to deal with whatever comes along. I have a patient, my oldest patient, she is 94. She's been working on her health for years. She lives in a house with her daughter, 3 generations and their children, and it turns out she was exposed to it. We don't know this for certain, but she had a lot of the symptoms, and she pulled through. And so I attribute that to her dedication to her health and her consistency with it. And I think that what we're dealing with right now, and there's just been so many wonderful things said already, is that to me, the COVID-19 right now is just exposing a lot of weaknesses that were there already.
Right.
At first it's like the news and everything is trying to come in like this is horrible, and it is horrible. But the medical system as we know it in this country has been broken for a long time, right? Yeah. I don't know if it ever was, right? And in terms of how our people, have been treated has been wrong for a long time. And so I think moving forward, what we really have to do, I think, to get to the root of things, because traditional Asian medicine, we look at the root and we look at the branch, right? We have to be able to address both for the person to be able to experience healing. And when we think about our people and recovering from this, we have to look at, as Dr. Leonard was saying before, how this triggers other things that have gone on for our people. This definitely makes me think about growing up during the crack epidemic. And at that time, we couldn't necessarily see all of the effects of it, but over time we could see, wow, that came from the crack epidemic. So I think that one of the key things that we need to do is we need to first not blame our people for what's going on. I think that's a really important thing. I've heard some people online at different places who have certain knowledge saying that we should have been doing certain things. I think number one is to not blame, because I don't think it's healthy for ourselves.
And unfortunately, we got to pause it there just because of time constraints. But I definitely want us to get back to that, because it's very important what you said. And I think just we need to marinate on that as well and not blame our people. We have one more presenter. We are now in the physical well-being portion of this meeting, and this is want to introduce now Dr. Sharita Yazid, a newly established citizen of Ghana, West Africa. So congratulations to you for that. And she has lived there for a number of years. Dr. Sharita is a naturopathic doctor specializing in iridology, Reiki, detoxification, nutritional programs, and weight loss for over 30 years. She is the founder of the African Culture and Wellness Festival, aka ACAWF of West Africa, and gathered a group of natural healers, master African dance and drum instructors, and fitness experts to help create a festival that would educate, empower, and heal Africans on the continent as well as the diaspora. Dr. Sharita, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, brother. How are you? How's everybody?
Well, thank you very much. Yes.
Good.
Please,
I'm very honored to be here. Very, very honored to be here. I want to first give thanks and praises to the ancestors, to the Most High. We know they are present. They are very much felt and appreciated. And we know that they are expecting us to come up with a lot of solutions. You know, we have, we're addressing this COVID-19, but we have so many other fears that we're dealing with, you know, here on the planet in reference to just being, you know, Black and alive. And so we have a lot of different issues in our communities when it comes down to health, like heart failure, and we're talking about with very young people too, hypertension, diabetes, cancer, kidney failure, depression, mental illnesses, Black on Black crime, abortion, which is probably our biggest epidemic, domestic abuse, and so much more. So we have to change the way we look at our health. And one good thing that's coming out of this COVID-19 or this pandemic is that it's forcing us to deal with our health. Our company is New Body Products, founded by Dr. Paul Goss, and we've been in business since 1976, 44 years, and we have never been this busy in 44 years. And as I talk to other healers and everybody else that's into holistic healing or herbal treatment and what have you, everybody is so overwhelmed, and we are really on the front line fighting very hard for you, and at the same time keeping ourselves, you know, together, keeping our families together. And I just want to talk to you about some things that we've been telling a lot of our clients in reference to what to do in reference to the COVID-19 and just taking care of your health in general. You know, a lot of people that's on the platform have been talking to us for a long, long time about our health and what we need to do, talking about pandemics, maybe conspiracy theories and all that stuff, but we've been told for a very long time as to what to do to take care of our health and get ourselves ready for anything that's our way. So I'm not saying for one moment that we have a cure for COVID-19. And I first let me step back for a minute because I wanted to acknowledge one of our elders who had just passed away a few weeks ago, Dr. Layla Africa. This is somebody who was like an uncle to me, family member. We've worked with him for over 30 years, and he's talked to us so much about these things. And he knew that these things were coming, and he told us a lot of things to do. And I want to take the moment, just a part of my time, even if it's just for 10 seconds, to acknowledge Dr. Layla Africa, and just take a moment for about 10 seconds of silence, please. Thank you, Ashe. So I know we have a lot of people that's going to be speaking, so I just want to get straight to the point. So you definitely want to work on your immune system, and you want to make sure that your respiratory is open and clean and clear. So first, to start with, when it comes down to holistic healing, we want to make sure that we are in alignment with the Most High, in alignment with our ancestors. And traditionally, as far as Africans, we have always incorporated spiritual energy into every aspect of our lives. And this ensures discipline when we do that. So we want to meditate on the greater good. We have our personal issues, our personal health, but we want to meditate on the greater good of the planet, the greater good of humanity, and of course the greater good of our African people. And we know our ancestors are always with us and working with us. I've had so many experiences making sure that when I stay in alignment, stay disciplined, then things work out in my favor. Secondly, a plant-based diet. I'm just going to be straightforward. A lot of us feel like it's not that important until moments like this, that we have to start working on our health. You don't want to start building your house when you're seeing the tidal wave coming to you. You want to be ready so you don't have to get ready. So having a plant-based diet, eliminating all kind of animal products from your diet is very important, because after all, these influenzas are coming from, are connected to animals, whether it's conspiracy theories and where they were putting it in the animals and they were eating it, or it's just something that just kind of happens in nature. Whatever the reason is, every time you hear about these things, it's coming from animals. You hear about the bird flu, swine flu. Now we're dealing with a bat. You never heard anything about a broccoli or a tomato flu. Okay, so during this time, we want to make sure that we're eating, proper food. So citrus fruits is very, very important, especially like grapefruits, lemons, oranges, limes. Even with the grapefruit, you can take the whole grapefruit along with the leaves if you can get it straight from a tree, and just cut up the grapefruit very well. Take the leaves and everything, and you want to the peelings, and you want to boil it for about 20 minutes, and then let it sit for about another 20 minutes before you start to drink it. And you'll do anywhere from 2 to 3 cups, a day of that. Another thing, when it comes
I'm sorry, can we just pause it there? As we can see, we got a lot of people with a lot of great information, which is why we have all of y'all's contact information so that people can kind of get more contact with you all later.
Okay.
Just wanted to really just introduce people to stuff. Great information. I love it. Wonderful. And I use CKLS. I've been using that for a number of years myself when I do my cleansing. So I feel you on that. Dr. Goss is bomb. I wanted to move on now to questions in this last portion of this hour, this first hour that we have. So if folks have any questions, and maybe we can get back to some of the things that we heard before, please ask your questions now. Put them in the chat. You can be acknowledged and then unmuted, and you can ask your question if you like, or if you just like to place your question in the chat, I can read the question. First, how we dealt with psychology from the psychological aspect and healing ourselves, of course, from the physical, the psychological and the spiritual, and then the physical. All, of course, are one. As Africans, we understand that we are not compartmentalized. We are a whole being, and so we have to put all of those things together. Somebody put, I see a question there, fasting during this time. Fasting during this time. Does anybody want to tackle that one? Go ahead.
Okay, definitely. This is definitely a great time to do detoxification and fasting and eliminating waste and toxins out of your system. Because one, a lot of us are at home and we have time. So you don't have to worry about being in traffic and trying to get to the bathroom because you done took some colon cleanser or something. This is a good time to do it. Definitely, yes. And I would recommend the minimum 3 days of a deep detox of just doing fruits and vegetables and taking colon cleansers and blood purifiers, as well as going up to 30 days and eating raw the whole time and drinking at least a gallon of spring water a day.
Wonderful.
I'd like to add something to that, if that's okay, real quick.
Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, in total agreement, so great to be on the line with you, sis. From a traditional medicine standpoint, we also think about the different seasons that we're in. So when that question was asked, it automatically made me think about the spring. We also think about the energy of the liver and how the different emotions and so forth can affect that. I've seen where a lot of people are staying up really late for nerves and for different reasons. And so we say it's really important, something basic as getting to bed by 10, because if not, the body's having to deal with certain issues that it wouldn't be able to handle on its own, which adds to the toxic burden. And a lot of people, even though they're home, aren't drinking as much water, which is really important for detoxification. So we say half of your body's weight in fluid ounces.
Another question is why spring water and not alkaline?
Oh, man. I say there's always the ideal, but as long as it's not tapped, I guess it depends on where you live at, right? We have a filter here, a Berkey filter.
Also, alkaline water is a medicine. It doesn't replace your regular water intake. Like regular water, the natural pH is at 7, which is neutral. Most alkaline waters tend to be at 9, and our body's natural pH is a little bit more than neutral, which is 7.34 to 7.44. And over time, if you're drinking water at an alkalinity of 9, it can actually throw off your body's pH and bring you into a state of what's called alkalosis, which is can just be as bad as acidosis. So it's a medicine to be taken as such, and it doesn't replace your regular water intake. Just wanted to put that in.
Indeed, indeed, and of course these are all things that we can implement now. That's something that we want to be mindful of. That all of these responses and this expertise that we're getting here today, which is something that is remarkable if you really think about it. These are some tips and tools that we can use in our everyday lives. So please feel free to implement this as well. And there are a number of other questions out here. Some people asking about ketosis. What about ketosis? Does anybody want to the keto diet? I guess there's some people that are dealing with that. That's been pretty popular these days.
Yeah, the keto, is good for folks with weight loss and things like that. It can be good under supervision. In terms of for this discussion around COVID, I don't know. I mean, I think you should just speak to us separately on that. I know this is talking about health in general, but I request if we can keep the questions just to what's going on now around COVID. I think the audience would get the most benefit out of that, if that's all right.
Indeed. And Mama Mawiyah also mentioned taking bitters as well. That would be something that people want to take a look at. In many of our traditional cultures, Caribbean, African, of course, bitters are very, very important. Did you all want to address that?
Yes, I mean, bitters.
First of all, what are bitters?
Like,
assuming that there's some people who don't know, what are bitters?
Okay, bitters, we say like herbs that are bitter. Pretty much bitter herbs that taste bitter. That can be a lot of different herbs from all sorts of cultures. And bitter herbs are just one of the many type of herbs. Like most of the bitter herbs have like, we don't like how bitter tastes. These pathogens in our body, bacteria, viruses, they don't like them either, parasites and things. And so oftentimes we'll use bitters in terms of, they have like a natural antimicrobial effect. So they're naturally like antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, and they come within like a whole wide range of herbs. And so when we're making formulas, we may put some herbs that have like a sweetish flavor, and a lot of the sweet flavors help to actually strengthen in addition to the cleansing aspect. So the bitter herbs have like a cleansing aspect, and so when you're putting together herbs, and now I know we're short on time, whether speak to us as professionals or if you're kind of doing some things at home from classic old school books like Back to Eden, you want to have herbs that help to, for COVID, especially with the respiratory, that help to strengthen the lungs. You want herbs that help to stop cough, herbs that's going to help get rid of phlegm, herbs that have an antiviral effect, herbs that affect, so there's no one herb for everything. We want to put a group of things, just like a family. You have a mother, father, children, grandparents, aunts, uncles, community. And when we construct herbal formulas especially, we want to have something that affects all different aspects, not just cleansing. We want to strengthen also.
The color white is also helpful for the lungs too. So like radishes, daikon, not radishes, but
pears, apples,
parsnip,
cauliflower.
the white color.
Wonderful.
I would want
to say asante sana to everybody. Unfortunately, we got to move on. We are, of course, a little bit behind time, and of course, again, there's a lot of information. So please refer to the contact information for all of our presenters today. We're going to move on now to economics portion of the programming today. We are now going to be joined by a renowned economist, researcher, and author, Dr. Sandy Darity. He is currently the Samuel Du Bois Cook Professor of Public Policy, African and African American Studies and Economics, and the director of the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity at Duke University. His research focuses on inequality by race, class, and ethnicity, stratification, economic schooling, and the racial achievement gap, north-south theories of trade and development, et cetera, and he is joining us now. So Dr. Darity, just want to make sure you're there. Dr. Darity, you with us?
I'm William Darity. I am the Samuel Du Bois Cook Professor of Public Policy, African and African American Studies and Economics at Duke University. And I'm also the director of the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity. I'd like to talk today about the issues that are raised by the coronavirus's exposure of deep inequalities in the United States. In fact, one of the most dramatic examples of the types of inequalities that we are now facing in America in the context of what is simultaneously a health crisis as well as an economics crisis is the excess mortality that's being experienced by Black Americans as a consequence of COVID-19. This excess mortality is evident in North Carolina itself, insofar as Black Americans are about 22% of the state's population, but constitute close to 40% of the folks who have died as a consequence of the disease. There are three factors that I think contribute to this excess mortality that we're observing. The first is the occupational distribution that's associated with Black employment. Black Americans are generally disproportionately concentrated in what I would like to call the missionary services or the care work that is performed in this society. And as a consequence, Black Americans are in employments that require a high degree of personal contact and or are personal service activities. This means in turn that one of two things can happen in the midst of an economic depression that's caused by a pandemic. Either an individual will lose their job altogether because the job is not conducive to social distancing and is not one that involves what's identified as, in quotes, essential work. Or if the individual is engaged in essential work because of the high degree of personal contact, then that employment leads to a greater risk of exposure to the disease. And I think that's precisely one of the key factors that explains why we're observing excess mortality among Black Americans. The second reason is a consequence of the fact that Black Americans have maintained for many, many years, as a consequence of the way in which racism is operating in this society, have maintained lower levels of health. And so as a consequence are more likely to have pre-existing conditions like asthma, diabetes, various forms of heart disease, hypertension. And these are diseases which apparently are more conducive towards creating greater vulnerability from exposure to the coronavirus. So that's the second big reason that Black folks generally have weaker levels of health than other Americans. But then the third factor is what I would like to describe as the fundamental pre-existing condition, which is the lack of resources, which is captured best by the racial wealth gap in the United States, where Black Americans constitute approximately 13% of the nation's population, but only have about 2.6% of the nation's total wealth. This means in turn that the average Black household has approximately $800,000 less in net worth than the average white household. This resource differential underlies to a huge degree, the scope of health inequalities that we observe across racial lines and lead Blacks to be more vulnerable to the effects of the pandemic. I would add further that this combination of factors really translates into not only health disadvantages, but a wide array of disadvantages in terms of social outcomes with respect to employment, education, political participation, and the like. So what do we do about this? Okay, so first I'd like to argue that as a nation, we should adopt a policy of the provision of Wi-Fi on a universal basis. This would reduce schooling inequities that we're now experiencing in the midst of a situation in which young people cannot go into classrooms. This would also permit more people to work at home or work remotely. At the present time, less than 20% of Black Americans have the infrastructural capability to work from home, while in excess of 30% of white Americans have that same capability. And then an additional benefit of having universal Wi-Fi is it creates the opportunity for remote voting. And in the context of a pandemic, it means that people could vote safely. A second policy that we need to adopt is a national health insurance program with a national health service. A third is a federal job guarantee, which would be an assurance of employment for all adult Americans on a national scale that would effectively guarantee that individuals would have the opportunity to have work at non-poverty wages with a benefits package that's similar to the package that's available to all public sector civil servants. This would mean that we would create a condition under which we set a floor on the level of compensation that would be provided for all employment, whether it was public or private, because private employers could only hire people if they at least match the minimum conditions that are offered in the public sector employment structure. This would mean in turn that the private sector's reluctance to provide the kinds of safety measures in employment that are necessary in the context of a pandemic, because it's expensive to provide PPE, because it's expensive to rearrange your workplace so that there's adequate distance between individual workers, that the private sector could no longer hire people in unsafe conditions because they would have the public option of seeking employment under the federal job guarantee. The federal job guarantee also could let us look beyond the current crisis to a situation in which it would be possible to professionalize care work, to actually use the public sector employment force for the purposes of engaging in solarization and producing a green economy. And furthermore, the public sector employees could actually bolster our postal service. And this is actually critical because the Postal Service has been under assault for approximately 30 years now, to the point where there is an effort to actually extinguish it. And I would encourage people to imagine a world in which we did not actually have a postal service and what kinds of expenses we'd be confronted with in terms of mailing even the smallest letter. Okay. I would add further, though, that the thing that we need to address directly is the question of the racial wealth gap. And the only way in which we can address that satisfactorily is through a policy that is specifically directed at Black American descendants of United States slavery. In effect, the other types of policies that I've talked about are for all Americans, but a reparations program would have to be specific to African Americans. And that's the way in which we could eliminate the racial wealth gap, because that's the mechanism for mounting sufficient resources, the $10 to $12 trillion that are required for the purposes of eliminating the racial wealth gap. Finally, let me observe that we should have had universal Wi-Fi. We should have had national health insurance. We should have had a federal job guarantee. We should have enacted a reparations program before the onset of the pandemic. This is something that should have been in place. But the fact that it's not in place doesn't mean that we cannot put it into place. To paraphrase Rahm Emanuel, let's not let a serious crisis go to waste in the following sense. Let's use the present moment, the trauma that we're confronted with in the present moment, as an opportunity to enact the types of programs that will make for a much, much better and a fairer America.
Also on economics, Dr. Ameena Ali. is a member of the UN Women of the Gambia. She is an embassy for material care reproductive rights. She serves as a representative to the U.S. for the international model of the UN Association. She is the ambassador for the New York Consulate of the Northern Citizen Community Board and the newest member to the International Human Rights Commission. She is here to talk about economics of women, those left behind, pushed behind, and historically underserved, the economic health black stakeholders. Dr. Ali, are you with us?
I
and
am. Am I on?
To make sure
can
that
you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Okay, there's a lot of background noise. I apologize. Good evening.
Please mute your mics, everyone.
I am Dr. Ameena Ali, Ramadan Mubarak for those that are celebrating. I am coming to you from the understanding of what we need to do as women. And I know it's a subset of a subset, but it is very important, especially because we are the teachers and we are the ones that are tribal leaders of those that come from us. So one of the things that I wanted to speak on today is the understanding of what we need to bring to the table as the ask. And the ask is not something that we're asking permission for, but the ask from the dialects, the tribes, and the cultures of those that are already here, those that are already talented and gifted in these areas. We're asking for you to now step forward and use your talents and abilities to be able to be solutionists for this this pandemic that has graced us. Now, I'm speaking from the Social and Civil Society Human Rights Protection Plan, which was orchestrated and authored by myself and two other sisters. And we brought this to the Gambia as an understanding as to what it is that we need to bring to the people of that area. Of course, this is a repeatable program, but it is something that is piloted in the Gambia itself. We're currently in a regressive and retrogressive care in our communities with no financial investment in care or progress to the status of our people. Knowing that, this has led to the influx of need of care and resources, supplies, and stable practitioners of care. We're not just asking for practitioners to come forth, we're asking for the stability of those practitioners to be there and give the commitment. Our four-step approach to this is knowledge and awareness of deficits, the fiscal leadership development, research and advocacy, and then the financial health parity. And that is built up by 5 different asks. And these asks are the ways that we're programming this to be repeatable in other countries. I work with the diaspora in the African Union, and I also pull together dynamics of ECOWAS, which is the West African coast. And then we deal with also the Eritrean Council and the East African coast. So we're putting together the diasporatic program. So the first ask...
Criminal, but just a report said this is a decent person, I think. You're lucky.
And we just ask that folks mute your microphones, please. Everyone mute your microphones, please.
The first ask, of course, is to leave no one behind. This one is to pursue the equity and access to quality health services with financial protections. That's very, very important. And this is enshrined in one of the fundamental rights here as human beings. This is something that we should have, and those that are a part of this systematic programming can step up to offer this. This is a key in reducing poverty and promoting equity and social cohesion. Governments, those governments meaning our governments, not the governments that we have been leaning on, which is futile. Governments within our diaspora should invest in everyone's health. The extension of this is through geographical coverage and reaching the most marginalized and the hard-to-reach population first. This is not stating your brand and your marketing, but going into the communities and reaching these people first. If that means that you're educating them first, if you're getting what it is that they need first, or if you're just supplying resources for them, these are the people that need the first because they're operating at a zero capacity when you go into the community. So I'll go back really quick. We have to establish multi-stakeholder mechanisms for engaging this whole society. This means that we have to take active steps in meaningful engagement of non-governmental actors. We cannot rely on the source that caused the problem to be the cure. So we have to rely on non-governmental actors. These are the cultural heads that we call ourselves, those that title and label ourselves as effective leaders in the culture. We have to be the actors now. We cannot rely on the sources that broke us or made the system that we're currently in. Likewise, solutions for each of this must be tailored to context. This means that we have to have populational needs that are effective first. Populational needs. This also resonates in the next act, which is investing more of the public financing that harmonizes health investments. What does that mean? It looks to a current finding in levels of insufficiency to achieve our goals now. That doesn't mean we're looking to 10 years from now, 5 years from now. How does that work? We need to increase domestic investment to allocate more public financing for health through equitable and mandatory resources. These are the things that we already bring to the table. This means that if you're offering a business, it is not about the income, it's about the outcome. Although we need to eat, the resources of our ancestors has shown that other ways of making money for you to offer these services are the ones we need to tap into. We're too westernized in thinking that money is the key to the reward that we get for the services we offer. And we have to remember that our ancestors didn't work with currency, but they were their own greatest investments. So we have to begin to remember that when we're going forward and not look to this westernized look of attaining or maintaining a financial background for us. It is about the whole. There is no I in team, so we have to bring that back. And the last piece on this is uphold quality of care. This is building a quality healthcare system. Now, this one does to access a full spectrum of safe, quality services and products in the community delivered by well-trained, not well-acumen. I'll say that again. Well-trained, not well-acumen practitioners. This means that they are well-paid, gender sensitive, and they are primary healthcare workers. What that accumulates to is you are building your brand by building other people. It is not about what your label and your logo looks like financially. It has to be what it is that you can bring to the whole. When you bring who you are, the money will follow. It's almost that adage, the more you give, the more you receive. So you have to see that in that sacrificial piece that you offer as a practitioner. Now, I know we like to get titles and labels and we like to have all of these accolades on the wall, but that has never cured anything. That has never cured anything.
Dr. Ameena, we got to pause it right there.
Okay.
Because we're running a little bit behind, but of course, as I mentioned, there's a lot of information and a lot of folks with information. We're going to move on now to our next presenters. So we're going to move on to some education now with Dr. Kwaw and Bashea. They've been educating and empowering African children for over 25 years, founders of the Wilson Baker Academy for Excellence and Achievement, and owners of Kumba Kids, a culturally rich edutainment company. Dr. Kwaw is a mathematician, historian, and chematologist, and Bashea is a nationally recognized master educator, teaching artist, and life and wellness coach practitioner. She writes plays and interprets music to involve the children's curriculum. They are a dynamic African duo, committing themselves to elevating our community by providing transformative educational experiences and infusing culture into the learning environment so our children develop with a knowledge of self and respect for our ways. Also joining us, Baba Wekesa Madzimoyo, the founder and director of Aya Institute, founded in 1998. Aya promotes African-centered education for youth and African-centered personal leadership development for adults and Black organizations. Baba Wekesa is married to Mama Afia. They have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and Baba Wekesa believes that education for African people should be an education for power and one that heals us from self-alienation. First, moving on to Dr. Kwaw and Bashea. Welcome to the forum, and are you all there? Dr. Kwaw and Bashea, are you there? All right, so we're going to move on to Baba Wekesa while we get them together. Baba Wekesa, are you joining us now? Baba Wekesa, are you there? All right, so we're just going to give folks just a moment. I know there's been quite a bit of information, and so we're going to just take a little breather here, and then we're going to make sure that we get the technical issues together. Again, asking folks to keep your microphones muted so that we can hear everything.
Maybe
I think we've
a couple of questions while I could contact them.
Sure. So we're going to take some questions now while we're waiting to get in contact with our next guests. So if we have any questions for the people who were in the last segment, please pose them in the chat, or you can go ahead and put your name, and then we can unmute you and have you join as well. So again, in our last segment, we were joined by Dr. Bishara Wilson and Danett Bean. Also, Dr. Naika was with us, as well as Dr. Sharita Yazid, dealing with the area of physical well-being. We, of course, already heard from the psychological, the mental, the spiritual aspect, and all of this, of course, dealing with the African whole, dealing with the wholeness of us as a people, as we know that there are quite a bit of there are quite a bit of areas to deal with, and we want to be proactive. So just remembering to keep in mind that that this information that we're getting today is information that we can use, and look at how some of the ways that we can use this information on a practical level. We do have Bashea and Kwaw with us, working through some microphone issues.
Can you hear us
I
now?
might have heard us. I hear you all and see you all in a beautiful
Right,
background.
I think you might have accidentally pressed the mute button by mistake.
That's all right.
You can hear us?
Hear you and see you very loud and clear and bright and African.
All right. Okay, sorry about that.
It's quite all right. So talk to us about what you all do in terms of educating our children for healing African people.
All right, so Dr. Kwaw and I are the founders of Wilson Baker Academy, and it's an African-centered school right here in Chocolate City in the DC metropolitan area. We are also the owners of Kaumpa Kids, which is a culturally rich educational program and entertainment program for children. So we go into schools, we do a lot of festivals, we do a lot of things to empower our children in the community, not just in the DC metropolitan, but throughout the country.
Wonderful. Dr. Kwaw?
Yes, how you doing, Kaba? We appreciate the opportunity to be amongst distinguished brothers and sisters and panelists and guests to discuss occurrences that are happening within our community. I think it's like Huey P. Newton said, even if we don't want to really acknowledge the system that we're in and fight and then change our way of life to make our community better, things in life will constantly, the way that the system is that it will constantly remind us that at the end of the day, the only people that we have to count on is ourselves. They don't have the infrastructure to protect themselves, and for us to put our faith and our hope or our aspirations or belief that the system is going to look after us or properly heal us or properly educate us or properly govern us. As soon as we feel like we got a good president, we get one right after to reverse it, right? So it's the same concept that Amos Wilson talks about. The gains that we've made in history before were all taken away during after the compromise in 1877. So we are looking at this as just another reminder to share with each other that we have to be about the business of educating and empowering and protecting and healing and building for ourselves. So what we do then, and what we have been committed to for a long time now, is the educating and elevating of our children through transformative educational experiences. And this opportunity or this pandemic, well, you know, we've always been in a pandemic.
Right.
As a community, we were always the first fired, the last hired, the most imprisoned, the most sick, the most miseducated. We've always been in a pandemic, right? But this is an opportunity to say, look, the realities that we see are affecting us the most across every aspect of the country. So what we have to do then is to take ownership of empowering and educating our children, and connect with people that are doing the work. Like I wish Baba Wekesa would come on, because I remember when he started his program back in 1998 when I was a student back in Atlanta, and I had the privilege of sitting up under him and learning from him at that time, along with Walimu Baruti and Mama Afia.
All right, wonderful. So let's see if we have any questions right now. If you all have any questions for our presenters, and also want to see if Baba Wekesa is with us right now. You just mentioned Baba Wekesa. Doesn't look like he's with us right now. Of course, Aya Educational Institute been doing some fine work for quite some time, and now of course we have Bashea and Brother Dr. Kwaw Imana. Their names were not correct on the flyer, but we got them correct right now. So we just wanted to make sure that that's all straight. And so so they're dealing with Wilson Baker Academy. Are you all looking for children's? Well, I have a question about children's books. And how can people add curriculum? I guess materials for curriculum.
How can they add?
How
can they add, or how can we provide? What are they asking? How can they add?
Yeah.
So I think that the benefit of this time is now we can start pulling the resources that we have in our communities to educate our children. We know that since we've gotten here, that our children have been miseducated. So I do think that if there are folks that are on this platform now who are in our town hall meeting who have educational curriculums for African children, put that in the chat, or maybe we can compile a list. I know that with Kaumba Kids, we are uploading, we're trying to upload videos, educational videos for children daily. We have some workbooks that we are putting on a platform that parents can download, because we know that this is a very challenging time for parents, because our children are out of school, and many of the school systems, both public and private, don't know how to handle educating children during this pandemic, and many families have just tapped out, and many school systems have also tapped out. So I think that this is a really great opportunity for us as African people to pull our resources together. We've got a plethora of creative people. We've got a plethora of educators, dynamic educators in our community. And if we could just begin to access that and become a lot more self-reliant on the wisdom that we have as educators. This is also, I would also want to add that this is a great time for parents too, because many of us are sending our children off to school and we're not quite sure what our children are learning. And so this is the time when we can also, as parents, get a lot more involved in our children's education. And I'm not just talking about reading and writing and science and math. I'm also talking about this is our time where we can find out where our children are spiritually. How are they culturally centered? How are they doing socially? Where are our children emotionally? Because we know that African-centered education is holistic. And so while we need to cover those academic subjects and make sure that our children are still strong, there are some even more important subjects that we need to cover, like spirituality, like health and wellness. And this is the opportunity for us to do it now. And again, Kwaw and I are just so thankful that we have a forum like this, where great African people are coming together and sharing so that we can empower ourselves to move forward.
Kabo, one of the biggest issues is the materials, educational materials, whether we're in Jamaica, whether we're in Nigeria, whether we're here, Detroit, whether we're in Ghana, who is controlling the materials that our children are learning within the institutions. So even one of the areas that when people do decide or recognize that the system or the educational system that is provided to us is not going to properly educate us, we don't have what the brothers just offered and what Bashea just talked about. We don't have like a data bank where we can go through and connect all of these educational materials. So a lot of it is that the people that are doing great work are doing it in like silos, right? And there's small bits of a puzzle that needs to be put together in order to create this educational transformation. So yes, if we have books, if we have materials, if we have songs, if we have dance, if we have whatever that we can use to empower our children, because we have it. It's like, how do we then build those networks amongst like-minded people whose commitment is to growth and development? So if this forum is a great opportunity to continue that type of work, right? Because now we're connecting with people that are doing similar work, connecting with people who are clear that it is our responsibility to teach. And I may be good at this subject, and you may be good at that subject, you may be good at that, and you may be a great healer, and you may be good at that. And so what you see happens in those spaces is that the children benefit from the strengths of the people who are surrounding them and instructing them. But if we can then pull all of those strengths together under some universal educational system for our people that goes across the world, Pan-African educational framework, that is what we should be looking to do as a community.
You know, one of the things I think as a parent, I sit there and I watch my children go to their dance classes and their drumming classes online now. And, you know, what I would love to, you know, put out there to the community, or a charge for us, is if those of us who are doing things online right now, like teaching or doing some of these auxiliary cultural courses, being able to open that up for more African people to join in. There are children who are missing their dance classes now, or their music lessons now, or their math lessons now. And, you know, just making those platforms that we already have known. And if you have a platform and you are limiting it to a small group of people, perhaps creating something that can be opened up to more African children, because our children need us right now.
Right.
They need us more than ever in that facet, and even being present with them at home, because many of us, we're used to going to work and being in the grind on the day-to-day. Now that we're at home, making sure that we take some time to sit down and have meals together, and to do spiritual work together, and just read books together, exercise together.
Definitely. And of course, we're still trying to reach some of our other people in the background there. But in the meantime, if folks have any questions for our two guests, please put them in the chat and we can acknowledge you. I did see some questions. Once again, this is Dr. Kwaw and Bashea, Imana. I know people were asking who you all were. And also, they are the founders of the Wilson Baker Academy and Kuumba Kids. So I know some people had some questions about that. There was one really good question that I thought I saw, and that is about the viability of testing for our children, and the importance of testing or not testing in this system. There seems to be a lot of emphasis on testing. Did y'all want to address that?
Yes, we know that there are that standardized testing was created like every other institution within the country as a gatekeeper to allow certain wealthy whites access to the best parts of America, right? So we're very clear about the history of testing within this country. And we also are very clear, many research has been done to show that there is no correlation there's minimal correlation between how you perform on, say, your SATs or your ACTs and how you're going to do within college. So some of the more elite schools, quote unquote elite schools, are moving away from testing in terms of making that as a requirement for interest into school. But on the flip side, as long as testing serves as a gatekeeper for students' access within this environment, testing is a real part that we have to learn how to master and overcome. But for me and for us, really, there's really only one or two tests that are like extremely important, right? When we say important, provide access in order to get us to next stages of our education if we're going within that route. One will be the PSAT 10. And the reason why I'm jumping over all K3 on up testing is because most of those tests are irrelevant, and there are benchmarks. There's arbitrary benchmarks or ideas that they think children should be at a certain time, right? For us, we know that PSAT 10 allows an African child or a child, if they perform well on that test, I mean PSAT 10 is the test that they take within their 10th grade year. If we perform high on that, that's when we go to a pool where they start sending scholarships to us, right? So the PSAT 10 allows us to get free money to go to schools that we should go to free anyway, since the labor of our ancestors were built the economic foundation of this country, and the SAT, ACT. Other than that, other than those two tests, we don't put that much emphasis on any other one. And the reason why we do is not because it's a measurement of who we are and what we're able to do, but it gives us access to where we need to go.
And the thing is, because we have our own curriculum, and many of our African-centered schools have their own curriculum, then we create our own assessments to assess the benchmarks where we want our children to be. And most times, if not all of the times, our benchmarks are set way higher than the European educational system. So that's another thing. Our assessment should be reflective of what the children are learning.
Right.
And they should also consider how children learn. So their children have different learning styles. And so being able to assess our children holistically based on their learning styles. Baba Kaba, I did see a note in there, and someone was asking in the chat about toddlers or young people who are not being able to have social interaction with their peers while they are out of school. And I'd just like to offer this as a possible solution. One, we do have telephones, but I know that at our school, our little people are going on Zoom, and they are coming together for like a morning meeting every single morning. Sometimes the children are coming together on one of the platforms to have lunch together. We've started book clubs, and so the children are interacting on a regular basis. But then the other thing that we also must consider, if our children are learning online and they're chatting online, then we also still want to be mindful about how much screen time they're having. Because if we're also looking at children's wellness, we also know too much screen time can have adverse effects. So making sure that we limit their screen time, but giving them the opportunity to chat with friends. And also know that parents and older siblings, we're going to have to be playmates for those little people, and we're going to have to get out and we're going to have to play on them. We're going to have to get down on the ground, because they do need that playtime. They do need that social interaction, and they love to interact or engage with their peers as well.
All right, wonderful. So that's Bashea and Dr. Kwaw Imana of the Wilson Baker Academy for Excellence and Achievement in the Banneker City, the D.C. Metropolitan area. You know how metropolitan areas are. It may not necessarily be in D.C. They're in the area. You know how that works.
In the area.
In the area, as they say here. Okay, so we're gonna move on now to and Santi Sana, thank you all. We're going to move on now to our next speaker. If we don't have Baba Wekesa on, is Baba Wekesa with us? Baba, you with us?
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be with you and with family at this time, because as Brother Gil Scott said, now more than ever, all the family must be together. Every brother and every sister everywhere feels the time is in the air. Common blood flows through common veins, as do common eyes all see the same. So I'm so glad to be here, that the family's together. One of the things that's key here in terms of African-centered education, I'm the co-director of AYA Educational Institute. We have been at this for 22 years, and we have been providing web conference-based education for 16 of those 22 years. Both for middle schoolers, high schoolers, and adults. We definitely have to have African-centered education that helps to heal alienation, and that has our people become better warriors, healers, and builders. Anybody that knows me, that knows I Education Institute, knows those three words, and the acronym WHB. The goal of our educational system is for us to be able to heal alienation. That comes from Baba Amos Wilson, that says we are alienated to serve aliens, And most of our education is alienated education. And if we just take what other people have provided us, we too will be providing alienated education. That is education that prepares our children to serve aliens and not us. Of course, Baba John Clark follows in that, I mean, not follows, but led in that saying, we must become responsible handlers of power. And so our education must help our children, help our adults, help our families become responsible handlers of power. And then we translate that into warriors, healers, and builders. Because often we don't recognize that we are at war, that we're being aggressed upon. And if so, we're not preparing us to challenge people, policies, and practices. Some of us were ready to challenge people. We ignore policies. We must be able to challenge people, policies, and practices, and not just be able to, but get practice at that. So how do you have an educational system while you're teaching children in 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th grade actually practice challenging policies as they're learning to write, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we must become better warriors. And at the same time, and I don't mean different people, at the same time, we, men and women, must become better healers. Because if all I am is a warrior, when I hear white supremacy come out of my child's mouth, come out of my mouth, come out of my mama's mouth, I don't need to grab a machete at that time. I need to be able to confront as a healer and to facilitate healing. And while I fight as a warrior, while I work to heal as a builder, I still must learn to build with and for my people. Build businesses, build homes, build schools, build defenses. And the key thing that's required for us to build is trust. And the key skill is how. How in the world do we knit trust among us where distrust has been sowed, where distrust has been induced? Not just distrust of each other, even distrust of my own self. That kind of trust building is critical if our organizations are going to do anything except for to jump up and then flounder and dissipate. It is critical. And that is right. If the best education is a warrior, healer, builder education, if it's prepared for, if I know science, how do I use science to heal? How do I use science to build? How do I use science to fight? Okay. If I know language, how do I know language arts to fight, to heal, to build? As opposed to assuming that just because you taught me how to craft a wonderful sentence and a paragraph or essay, that when it comes to crafting that for fighting, I'll automatically know how to do that. I'll automatically know how to craft it to build trust. I hope y'all are with me on this, because this is what we're stand for. This is what we need. We need education that heals alienation. We need education for responsible handlers of power, and that translates into education that we say will make us better warriors, healers, and builders. And some people say that it's required, oh, that's too much. I had one person say to me, Bible Captain, you're asking too much. I said, I'm not asking it. Our ancestors are demanding it, and the situation that we're in demands it. It's time for us to create education to do that. Now, you might guess if we have this kind of education, it has to include parents. This kind of education cannot be you just drop your child off and then we supposed to fix them up or dust them off or do whatever. No, it means it's a whole family educational process. All right, and so that's what we're about. That's what we think is absolutely needed right now. I want to have people know that education regarding this particular situation that we're in, COVID-19, is already is going on. And I know a number of people around the country are doing it. Well, we've opened our classes, our Education Institute, 3 of our classes that have been going on and they go on regularly to people who want to audit those classes because many of their children are out. And so if you want to know for people who've been doing web conference-based education, now I want to distinguish. It's not online education, though I don't knock that. Web conference education means there's a live teacher there already and always, so that you're not having an assignment that you read it and then you go and do it. You actually are interacting with peers and with teachers and instructors actively in the process. And 3 of our classes, we've opened those up for people to audit for the rest of the school year for any donation they can afford to give, or none if they cannot. We also have started town hall meetings every Monday to deal with what we call an Ngolo response. Ngolo is Kikongo. Ngolo means energy. It means power. The current response invites our people and our youth to surrender our bodies and authority to those who are alien to us, and we say no. So on Mondays, we work with adults. During the week, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we literally teach our children the science of the COVID-19 virus and the science of our immune system, including using allomelanins and activating our melanin as a key part of our defense system. And I don't just mean slipping the t-shirt over your head either. I'm talking about understanding the science and the biology of how your melanin heals, not just how it connects us through the pineal gland, through astral projection, and connect us to the stars. I'm talking about how, on an everyday basis, we can use activate our melanin to use it to help us defeat this virus, all right? And how to choose foods that are high in allomelanins that are known to stimulate our immune system. Now, that's what you do when you have an independent African educational system. You shift, you take advantage of the time, not to ignore the virus or to instill fear in our families, but to instill, using science in this case, to instill power and pride. And that's where we have what we're doing, what we've been about doing, and we'll continue to do that. Right now, slated to go through the 6th of June, and then we'll see from there. Where can you find this information? If you go to ayaed.com, ayaed.com, you can find it. If you go to Facebook and you look up Madzimoyo, Madzimoyo, last name Madzimoyo, first name Wekesa, Weke. That will pull up either Afia Madzimoyo or us. If you are on Facebook, you can join a Facebook group, and you'll get it fastest there. Okay, and that is Ngolo Movement, Ngolo Movement, Ngolo Movement, and you can find that for you to plug into that. If you go to our base website, ayaed.com, you'll also find links and how to get to us.
All right, Baba. We're going to, unfortunately, have to end it there as we are pressed for time. We definitely thank you so much, Baba Wekesa with Aya Institute. We want to now invite Brother Dr. Anthony Smith to come back in with a special word. Brother Anthony, are you there?
Indeed, yes, I am here.
Please go right ahead.
So, as I said at the beginning, we're about at the halfway point, and I said we have all the answers that we need to heal ourselves. And you all can see with the wonderful talent and information that's been dispersed that is proved evident. We have created the Black Therapy Central Network for everybody to have a central place to come and get information, to provide information, to find people who can help you with your healing process. And one of the things that we want to do in a practical sense, we're going to have on that website a 10-day healing process. And we hope that you all will join in, because we understand that the collective is important to helping us move forward. We have a power within us, that same energy. I want everyone to think about the energy that was present during the Haitian Revolution, where unspeakable odds were overcome to defeat the French. That same spirit, we can call on that spirit right now and create the change that needs to happen. So I want to take 30 seconds and have everybody just do some breathing, because this is practical. We're doing a lot of talking, but we also want to practically say, what can we do to tap into spirit to create that change? So take 30 seconds. Get very still. There's been a lot of in and out, muteness, and people getting some sense of frustration, but let's not forget the good that's happening right here. So let's take that 30 seconds and just breathe, and all of us collectively tap into the power, the spirit, the energy that we have, and let's make this thing make change for us. So 30 seconds. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. The energy of our ancestors got us. Log on to blacktherapycentral.com, and we're going to keep this dialogue moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, that's where you can find information about all the presenters. I know a lot of folks want to know who's who and how can I get in contact. Go to blacktherapycentral.com and you can find out there. We're going to move on now with.
Greetings, African family. I'm honored to join the healing discussions initiated by Nana Mawiyah and her new Black Healing Therapy platform. I give thanks to my ancestors in Onyame. Giving thanks to my ancestors in Onyame, I'll talk about the healing power and sacredness of water in indigenous African worldview and eco-philosophies. I then discuss our current struggles for water healing sovereignty and offer some recourse. We can't fight the coronavirus pandemic in our communities without water. Our bodies are 70% water, designed to cleanse ourselves before returning to the ecosystem. Water remains spiritual and utilitarian for all of us, and especially our African brothers and sisters. But it has become a very political, divisive resource due to the privatization of water, neocolonial borders between nation states and communities, and the struggle and power to control water by Urugu. Additionally, while overall Blacks have disproportionately more access to water services now, many in the South, in particular in the Mississippi Delta and Alabama, still don't have access. Toxic air and waste continue to harm us despite the emergence of the environmental justice movement. And of course, now we have a very weak EPA with lax regulations on these issues. We know about water crises today in cities like Detroit and Flint, Michigan, because of how they happened and the news coverage they received. But across these cities and many others, rising water bills, water shutoffs, liens of unpaid bills being attached to properties, which is displacing many people from their homes, are happening at alarming rates across the nation and in our communities. To heal and move forward, we must control our sources of water, land, and food. How can we do that? First we have to secure land, water base here and in Africa, and it needs to be for our people. We have to recognize and be aware of the linkages between our psychological and physical well-being and water. We need water. We can't live without it. We can support the Emergency Water as a Human Rights Act by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, which is seeking to stop water shutoffs, not only in Detroit, but across the nation. We can join the Alliance for Food Sovereignty movements in Africa and the US at #AFSA. There's organizations like We the People in Detroit, and there's also the Black Sustainability Summit led by Sister Afia Greenlee that we can become a part of. We also have to center our critiques and solutions of our situation and healing needs on what our built environment should become, using African eco-philosophies. We also have to recognize the politics and power of water. We need to be involved in and become a part of water boards in our cities. These boards determine who gets water, when, where, how, and at what price. Ultimately, we need to reimagine how water governance happens from an African eco-cultural paradigm. And finally, I'd recommend supporting the African Heritage Studies African Water Initiative Project. You can contact me about that, or also visit our website at ahsa50.com and join our efforts to help support water initiatives in Africa. I hope these words have contributed a little bit to some new ways that we can think about healing in our relationship to water in our ecosystem. Thanks for listening.
Our next couple of presenters, activist Sister Naika Apeakorang was born in Brooklyn, raised in North Carolina. Her work as a business management consultant she's helped individuals launch and scale hundreds of businesses. She's a public speaker, including the spokesperson for Let's Buy Black 365, the Black Economic Empowerment Movement. And she's a talk show personality as the host of Let's Buy Black 365 Connect TV. Nataki is a lifelong vegan vegetarian and supports causes around Black liberation, environmental sustainability, animal rights, vegan living, and Black economic empowerment. Also joining us, Baba Hekima Kanyama, born and raised in Charlotte, North Carolina, dedicated 40-plus years of his life to the liberation of African people. Even as a youth, he saw a need for change and continued to fight injustice, which eventually led to his unjust imprisonment. Upon his release, Baba Hekima started immediately to organize based on new thinking and a plan he developed while in prison. Other brothers and sisters have joined with him, his wife and family, and they are ready to roll with a system called Functional Unity. So I want to welcome our sister Nataki and Baba Hekima. Are you all with us?
Hekima is here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Baba, I can hear you. Sister Nataki, are you with us? All right, well, Baba, since you're on with us now, please let us know about some of the things that you're doing in the community to help toward our healing.
Well, thank you, family, and this is a great opportunity. And on behalf of the Ulu family, chiming into this platform from around the world, we say thank you. And, again, it's a great connection, and we want to keep it moving. My current primary involvement is with Us Lifting Us Economic Development Cooperative, based in Atlanta, but again, with membership around the world. We were instructed to share at least 3 items or ideas in the area of sustainability, power building, of course, and sustainability to contribute to the discussion today. The first thing I want to share with the family and encourage us to all participate in is to take a logic pill, a sustainable development and, again, logic pill. And what I mean by this, and it's Wekesa shared it and other people shared it as well, but in essence what we're saying is that African people are not dominated and exploited by Europeans, Japanese, and others so much as we are dominated and exploited by the systems and institutions that other people create and maintain. That logic pill, that thinking, that psyche says to us that if we expect to be powerful, then it's incumbent upon us to develop systems and institutions and grow them so that we create our own space. So we're encouraging all of us all the time to be in that mindset where we are builders and in a grand sense. The second thing we would want to share with the brothers and sisters, something that we can do practically and do it now, is to create on a personal level a business directory of businesses and institutions that you support. Make it a project for yourself and your family. Build it alphabetically and be prepared to share your business directory with other people that you meet in the community. Obviously, some of those would be virtual businesses that you frequent. But that exercise of developing a personal directory, alphabetically organized, and share it with people that you know, and have them build their personal directory, and then you share it and you build collectively. And 2 things we would encourage you to do is to, again, share that with people that you know, and let the businesses that you know understand that you are connected with a community that is building such a directory, and that at a point you'll come back and allow them to energize and participate in the process. Us Lifting Us, through what we call UBCs, or Ulu-based communities, will teach in our communities how to monetize these systems to develop new businesses and to also pull funds in to fund our African-centered schools and other institutions that are important to be built and sustained in community. And the third thing, very quickly, and I think all of us have heard this, is the first culture is agriculture. So we want to be very active now and build upon it to grow our own food and to come up with models where we can share and participate in marketplaces of value-added activities, and of course, not just food. I mean, we grow plants for building material, for medicine, and for other things as well. So from the Ulu family to all of us globally, I thank for the opportunities, and if there are any questions or concerns, I'll deal with them. We can be found at usliftingus.com, usliftingus.com, and we are a global cooperative movement, again, around the world. I see Sister Nataki's photo. Hey, sis. I see your image on the, hey, it's been a while. So this is Hekima Kanyama with Us Lifting Us, and I'll give way to Sister Nataki and others who would be presenters at this time. Thank you.
All right, Asante Sana Baba, that was beautiful, wonderful, great information, and that's what this is all about. And then we're going to move on now to the brain here, the nerve center of this whole thing, and the one who inspired this initiative, Sister Naika Apeakorang. Greetings.
Hi, greetings. Thank you for having me. Yes, so I'm here to talk about planning and building for the future. And I just want to touch on a couple of key points. And I want to first start by thinking about the audience that I'm speaking to, and even looking at some of the comments I've heard people talk about, building our own economies and, checking out of the economy and coming out of, doing all of these different things. And others who may be business owners, others who may be working for someone else. And so when we're looking at building and planning for the future, what does that look like? And one thing I want to offer is when you look at people who have been in the past able to build their own economy, some of the people who made fortune on Bitcoin or coming up with their own cryptocurrency platform, what they did is, just using this as an example, what they did was they took their wealth or earnings in the current system and used that wealth to purchase help from vendors who they needed help from, purchase all different kinds of supplies, etc. They used that money to begin to build something else. And so I do want to touch on the idea that so many of us are disillusioned with the current system, that our mindset has been, let's just immediately disengage from everything. And I would say until we own the land or have a military way to take control of the land, then how are we going to build an operation that's going to create the businesses, that's going to create the jobs, that's going to allow us to own the land? So we have to really think about it strategically. So coming from a management consulting background, when I'm looking at building and planning for the future, yes, we don't want to build and plan using other people's flawed models, meaning we're not trying to just have a black-owned liquor store that's going to keep destroying our people, or a black-owned, any other example you can think of. But what we want to look at is what are eco-friendly ways that we can build and grow that aren't damaging our environment. We want to call people. There are some of us who are struggling financially, but for those of you who are on the call who have savings and resources, and you're looking at what can I do with my savings and resources to be an asset in my community, I want to challenge you to think beyond just hoarding money. You know, wealth is not about hoarding money. Wealth is about having something that can translate from you to future generations, and not just your biological family, but your people as a whole. And one of the ways to do that is through enterprise. So as a management consultant, one of the things I see every day is persons who are able to take their savings and create not a side hustle, and don't get me started, I don't have enough time to talk about my issues with side hustles, but not a side hustle, not something where you're just, you know, making a couple dollars here and there, but an enterprise, because when we look at our people losing jobs on a massive scale, it's because we've been looking to the wrong people for the jobs, and because those of us who are in positions to create jobs are often not creating them in that way. One of the fallacies I hear all the time is people say, well, you know, I'm just doing this because I love doing it. I'm not really trying to make a lot of money. Why not? Make a lot of money, take that money, reinvest it in your community so that others can do some things so that you can do more to help your people. It doesn't have to be, you know, I think a challenge is we see what people with bad intentions do when they get money. And we think that's the only thing that you can do. But you can take your good intentions, if you know you have good intentions, and if you know you're community-minded, and do other things. So with that, let's look at, there's an exercise at Bibi Pahodie Adeswabia, the African-centered school. I happen to be in Ghana right now. I'm one of the ones who became a citizen in November. I teach youth entrepreneurship. And one of the first concepts that I talk to the children about, they create real-life businesses that earn money and that are going to employ other children who look like them, so that they don't have to worry, their peers don't have to worry about going and begging somebody else for a job just to make ends meet. So what is the first thing they do? Look at your community and look what's needed, and not just the things that are going to get you living kind of paycheck to paycheck, or just satisfying your basic needs. You want to be in a position where you have extra. That extra is what will allow you to, you know, if you have good intentions, maybe you're not interested in the political system as it is, but maybe you want to position yourself to, there have been politicians who've been able to position themselves to allocate land for certain things in the community where it can't be touched by other people. So we want to think about doing things that are bigger than ourselves. Also, within the Let's Buy Black 365 movement, you can go to letsbuyblack.com. We are revamping the business directory. Baba Hekima talked about building a business directory, and one of the amazing things about letsbuyblack.com is that, you know, when we look at directories that have happened in the past, they've all been contingent on one person, one individual, one entity trying to gather up all this information. But when we look at crowd sharing, just like crowdfunding, you can put lots of dollars from different places together to do something. With crowd sharing, you can take the 5, 10, 15 businesses you know and share that information. So not only are you creating businesses, but you are investing your dollars into businesses that are creating jobs in the community, that are investing in the type of education that we want, like what we heard from Bashea and Baba Kwaw and Baba Wekesa. We can do all of these kinds of things when we aggregate our resources. And so when we're talking about building and planning for the future, one of the things I want to impress upon people is the importance of thinking about how you are aggregating resources. And until we individually, and how are you going to make the shift from, well, I'm just earning a couple dollars here and there, and I'm just breaking even, to how am I actually aggregating resources? if I know I can't do it by myself, who is it that has the same ideological mindset who I can do it with? And on bbtome.com, which is one of the sponsors of this event, I would encourage everybody, one last point, I heard people talking about, you know, going to Facebook and going to Instagram and Twitter for some of these things. And we did put content out there because we have to reach the people where they are. But bbtome is the Black education social network that is for us, by us, created by us, run by us. And as much as we're talking about problems that we have with Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and all these people, divest from that and invest in yourself in bbtome, a Black education network. That's one of the first things you can do if you're talking about divesting. And then at the same time, look at what you can invest in. And if you are someone who is in a position where you want to start a business, you want to start an enterprise, or if you know someone who has a business or enterprise who's maybe retiring, who's maybe burnt out, who's like, I want to keep this going so that it doesn't live and die with me. That's not legacy. If you
all right, and Sister Nataki, we have to end it right there. We really appreciate what you had to say. We're going to move on to our next portion, which deals with media. We have Professor Griff and Brother Scotty and myself. I'm going to cede my time just in the interest of time, but I know we have Professor Griff. He's a cultural and entertainment analyst, internationally renowned educator, author, producer, musician, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame recording artist, lecturer, and co-founding member of the pioneering and revolutionary hip-hop group Public Enemy. He stands as a highly acclaimed, seasoned entertainment industry veteran, sought-after resource on all aspects of the music business, an activist both in the conscious and hip-hop communities, currently stands as a permanent fixture on the international lecture circuit and with his riveting and powerful discourse, and he's also an author. Professor Griff, are you with us?
Yeah, this is Professor Griff.
Professor Griff, okay. I hear you. So I don't know if you heard the introduction, but we just introduced you, brother. Good to have you on with us.
Greetings, man.
Yeah, and looking to hear what you have to say now and dealing with the media and its influence in just a few minutes. Go right ahead, Brother Griff.
Okay, give thanks. First, at the outstart, I want to give thanks to Mawiyah Kambon and Jamila Codrington for giving me this opportunity just to address this state of emergency town hall meeting, this global Black community. It's very rare and few and far in between that I ever get a chance to address our brothers on different continents, the global Black community. I'll be respectful of my 4.5 minutes now in dealing with this whole idea of Black unity, healing, and then more importantly, the solutions for not only COVID-19 but beyond. So when talking about the media, we know and understand that the media, the acronym for media is multi-ethnic destruction in America, or maniac European devils in action. It was a song I penned some time ago, knowing and understanding how the media works. The media's role when it comes to Black people in the Black African diaspora is misinformation, then of course disinformation, distortion, and outright lies. Malcolm said the media's the most important powerful entity on earth, because they influence and they control and manipulate people's minds. He says they have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent, and that's power. He says because they control the minds of the masses of the people. This is Malcolm X. So ever since we've known of chemical and biological warfare, the media played a strategic role in influencing the people, the masses of the people, winning over the sentiment of the masses of the people, from chemical and biological warfare, from every pandemic or even epidemic, from HIV/AIDS to Asian flu to SARS, avian flu, swine flu, MERS, Ebola, Zika, and then Ebola again. We have seen the media take up a particular position to become the buffer between those that foster this pandemic and scamdemic, and those that are responsible for influence the masses of the people to take a planned vaccination program that they've already had in place. Here we are, and I'm respectful of my next 2.5 minutes. The Corona, I call it the Corona Gates Pandemic 2020. This was planned well in advance. They just needed to win over the masses of the people, and they did that by the people that they paid and in cahoots with in the media. So my solution is this: we need a council of elders that are held responsible and that are held accountable on every continent where black people are. We need a council of elders, especially in America, probably in every city. 2, we need a built-in infrastructure where we have a newswire network and information service that we can service the black community and the black African diaspora with positive information and even cures. We don't have to run it by the AMA, the American Murder Association or American Murder Association. We don't have to run it by them. We have natural healers among us. And I'll be respectful of my last 45 seconds. We need to adhere to the core and global African culture as far as our elders that still walk among us, who always stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. So I'm a soldier in the struggle and in the fight for liberation for our people until they lower me in the ground. And I want to make that very, very, very clear. Whenever my elders call on me to do the work, I do the work. So I'm listening to the global drumbeat. I'm listening to discover my voice within, to reclaim my power, to unleash my creativity, and to manifest my purpose on purpose. This is Professor Griff from Public Enemy, and thanks for my 5 minutes. I really appreciate you, brother. And thanks to the Black African family globally.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. We're going to move on. We're going to introduce the other panelists. Brother Scotty Reed, a founder of the nonprofit media organization Black Talk Media Project and creator of the award-winning media platform Black Talk Radio Network. He is the host and producer of the BTR News podcast and award-winning New Abolitionist Radio podcast, which he has produced since 2013. He has been producing news talk programming since 2007 and interviewed hundreds of guests on various topics over the years and assisted many with technology questions. Welcome in, Brother Scotty Reed. Are you with us, Brother Scotty?
My name is Scotty Reed. Just some quick background, who I am. I'm on to speak about media and technology, and I was first exposed to technology as a very young man because my uncle was fortunate enough to have one of those middle-class black jobs back in the day, working at the Ford Motor Company. And he was able to afford some, things like personal computers that a lot of people weren't able to afford. And this is my uncle, and I spent a lot of time at his house with his children. So I got an early exposure to working with technology because of the resources he was able to provide to his family that would later prepare me for a very short stint in the U.S. military, where I was a communications specialist and worked with all types of communication technology and also computer technology that had not yet hit the street. So I spent time in there from 87 to 92, was also part of building the world's largest tactical combat communications network in history to date in the combat zone. So I was deployed to the first Gulf War, and I take no pride in that, as I was a young 20-year-old person, yet to discover how me as a black person was being used to oppress other people around the world, specifically non-white people and African descendant people, by being in the military. But a lot of revolutionaries, not calling myself a revolutionary, but a lot of people I look up to also, were in the military. Black Panther Party, rank and file members, later Black Liberation Army. So, but I was able to use what I learned from mass communications in the military, and then later on, fast forward to 2008, with the takeoff of internet talk radio and was able to use that background that I had picked up, those skills I had picked up in that technology knowledge, to create a black online radio, digital radio, and podcasting platform, which in the past 2 years has been ranked #1 in the world by an independent marketing firm is based in India, created by 2 computer scientist graduates of Caltech, called FeedSpot. And so, you know, that's a third party who did the ranking. That's not something, you know, we say ourselves that we #1 in the world, but it is what it is. And the reason that it was created was, first, you know, I discovered internet radio when this white man named Alan, I forget his last name, but he created Blog Talk Radio. So 2007, I created a program. I saw the value in being able to do our own talk radio as opposed to being forced to listen to that, which they call mainstream media, where you may not get authentic voices or hear from grassroots activists and people just working on behalf of our community. And so then, you know, I got kicked off of there, and I had to learn how to adapt technology to be able to do it without, you know, this white man's platform. And so Black Talk Radio Network was born in 2008 as a safe digital space for other people who were using that technology to reach our people. You know, I've been on listening the whole entire call. You know, we specialize in broadcasting these types of things, and that's what a radio network is about. But more importantly, for healing for the future, you know, I agree that we have to be in control of our message and vetting the information that's going out to our people. And this technology that, you know, has been around for about 2 decades now is very affordable, that we can use it to bypass the mainstream mass media communication and build our own. Now, we've done that with Black Talk Radio Network. We reach people all over the world, our collective of podcasters and internet radio hosts. But what we see in the future is being more effective if we can get our people to adapt this technology in these platforms to a more localized level, to where you're then organizing on the local level, just like back in the day with terrestrial black radio, which was very pivotal. You know, black media in our resistance to slavery and white supremacy, black media has always been a big part of that, whether you're talking about the abolitionists who ran newspapers and gave, you know, in-person had town hall meetings. You want to talk about Marcus Garvey? He built perhaps the largest ever black media operation that has ever been in existence, totally black-owned and black controlled. And then we had our independent black radio hosts. Now, we lost those because of politics, these terrestrial stations, but this technology provides us a solution in moving forward and being able for our educators, our healers, our philosophers, our political scientists, our researchers to be able to talk directly to the people and bypass the censorship of the mainstream media. So that's who I am. That's what I'm utilizing the platform for.
Thank you very much, Brother Scotty. That was amazing. Definitely need to have this media and control of our narrative. Media is very important. Media is a medium, and media is a plural form of medium, and a medium is a mechanism by which that communicates. So many of us know mediums, whether they be shells or cards or microphones or speakers. These are all mediums. They communicate, and so he and she who controls the narrative will control the story, and who controls the story will control the actions of people. So we definitely have to keep that in mind. We're going to move on now to our next section. Right now, we are going to move on to politics. African Black Okuni, Dr. Obadele Kambon. He is the founder of abibitumi.com, the only African Black social education network. He completed his PhD in linguistics at the University of Ghana. Among the many positions he holds there now, he is a senior research fellow, also editor-in-chief of the Ghana Journal of Linguistics and secretary of the African Studies Association of Africa. Those roles ensure African knowledge is maintained. Okunini Kambon played an instrumental role in both developments that lead to Africans of the diaspora receiving Ghanaian citizenship that you heard a little bit about today. He now assists others interested in repatriation via repatriateToGhana.com. Dr. Jamila Codrington is known as the Solutionary Warrior Elder. Born in Brooklyn, New York, Dr. Codrington moved to the South in the 1980s to practice self-determination with his family's commitment to sustainable living. We do have somebody in the background. If we could have that microphone muted, please. That would be very, very helpful. Dr. Codrington taught African Studies and Education in local universities. His great insight into the conditions of black people had him to develop Black Tricks, the Cambonem, along with his son to bring about solutions to the problems we face. And finally, Mama Pam Africa, 4'11" giant. She's a presence that looms large worldwide, where her organizational savvy plus her sheer persistence helped pull off what many leaders, luminaries, and laymen alike consider to be one of the most monumental equal rights victories in recent decades. She advocated for and created the Climate to Kill the death sentence of Mumia Abu Jamal. She's frequently found on the front lines nationwide fighting for ending mistreatment of our people. Pam Africa is in each and every struggle she can attend for social justice at home and abroad, and she is a fiery warrior mama. And for those who met her, in addition to all of that, she's one of the sweetest people you ever meet in your life. So we'd like to bring on our next panel in politics, Brother Abadile. Welcome, Black, to the program.
Black, fantastic to see you here. I definitely wanted to keep it as short as possible, but also as comprehensive as possible. A few weeks ago, somebody sent me an article from FT.com, and the title was "Only Victory in Africa Can End the Pandemic Everywhere." And in that article, it mentioned several signatories, including the president of Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and many leaders of various Eurasian white countries, Italy, so forth and so on, that were pledging support for a program in order to get $100 billion in aid. And essentially what this is an excuse to get new change. So no matter what the situation is, whether it's created by Eurasians as a pandemic or not, once you know how to play chess, no matter what the situation on the board is, you know how to exploit it. And this is something that we see very clearly in that, this debt moratorium is just an excuse to encourage more enslavement economically, so forth and so on. There's a proverb in P that says, which is that we don't weave a shield on the battlefield. One does not weave a shield on the battlefield, which means that we don't wait until the situation comes before we decide to act. There is one situation where we are right now, which is that we are here in Africa, we're on the battlefront, right? Those of you who are there in what I like to call Crackerville, the United Snakes, you are deep, deep, deep behind enemy lines. However, once we understand that this land that we are, the motherland, is the battlefront, this means that we actually have to be building a nation as we would like to see. And one way that we can do this is by divesting from America and places like this and investing in Africa in order to make Africa great again. And there are various ways that we can do that. So my father refers to the United Snakes in particular as a cesspool. So once we know that this is a cesspool, now we have to think about how we can drain out that cesspool, because the cesspoolians, these Eurasians, these whites, they thrive off of our continued lifeblood that keeps dripping into there. And one thing that we recognize is that only nations can stand up to nations. An example is that if it's you alone versus 10 people with knives, bats, and guns, you may not win that fight, much less if it's you alone against 20 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people. The odds get worse and worse. So imagine if it's just you, oh, I'm woke, oh, I'm conscious, I'm sharing memes online on Facebook, against an entire nation, the entire white nation throughout the world. That's not a winning formula, that's not a winning mechanism. So this means that we have to have structures and processes in order to create our own communities, because that community can now fight and even defeat another community. And then we have to build our own nations. Now, we may think about, okay, well, what about these nations that are here, like Ghana? I got my Ghanaian citizenship 2016. My entire family got it last year as part of the year of return and things of that nature. But we also understand that these nations, as they are set up with parliamentary systems and presidents and vice presidents and treasurers and all these things, that they are set up to do exactly what they do, and that's exactly what they have done, which is to be neo-colonial states. So one option would be to try to take over these states. Another one would be to actually create an African state based on Ma'at. And the way to start with that is starting off with a community and then moving from there. Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Is this an open platform where everyone speaks, or is it set speakers?
Okay.
No, you got to mute your microphone right now.
All right. So for the sake of time, let me try to wrap it up very quickly. So this is the idea that rather than trying to swim our way through these cesspools, these neo-colonial cages in which we find ourselves, that we can also work towards building communities, setting up processes to do that, and then to interconnect those communities, and thereby we are making the nation that will fight against the global white nation, which I like to refer to as Kemet. This nation that we are now creating is the nation of Kemet, the land of black people. Again, modern Kemet, global Kemet, and that's what that is. So again, we have to think about what are the materials with which we are going to build that African nation. Can you build an African house with non-African materials? Can you just get some stone blocks from Israel and say, oh, it's an African house because I'm in Africa and I'm building it? But you know that the materials that you're using to build it are not African. So again, this comes down to what we have to have is our own African building materials. This means we have to have the research to know what those are, right? And some of the efforts that we've been doing, one is on Abibitumi. So everybody who's on Facebook, I would tell you quit Facebook. You may not do it, but I'm going to tell you to do so. Those of you who are on Twitter and Instagram, I would tell you quit all of those and work to build the only one that is African and about African liberation, which is abibitumi.com, the only African equals black-centered African social education network where you can communicate without getting thrown into cracker book jail, without being cut off on YouTube or things of that nature. And within Abibitumi, we actually have a community building initiative here on the ground in Ghana, and then also interconnecting communities, including those that are here, those that are there in Crackerville, those in Canada, those in Spain, various places throughout the world. So those who are interested in that initiative, you can do that. But to come back to the initial point that I made about divesting from America and investing in Africa, we also have repatriatetogana.com. So when we say repatriatetogana.com, what this does is assist Africans who are interested in citizenship, those who are interested in no longer financing our enemies through every single thing that we do. When we pay our mortgage there in Crackerville, we're financing our enemies. When we pay our car note, we're financing our enemies. They take that exact same money to build the prisons and to buy the bullets that they will shoot us down in the streets with. So if we're unhappy with getting shot down the streets, we also have to think about to what degree am I contributing to doing that by financing my enemies with my very presence. So those of you who are interested in repatriating, I would also invite you, repatriatetogana.com. And there we actually assist Africans with every single aspect of repatriation, getting your business registered, getting your land registered, you know, purchasing houses, all types of things. That this is what we work with. We have somebody who we're working with right now. And, you know, this is on the ground, the actual work. This is what the work looks like. So once we understand that this is the battlefront, then we need more warriors to line up for the battlefront. Those of you who are behind enemy lines, some of my favorite people are on the call. Y'all are doing excellent work. You know, keep it up. However, this is a call to the warriors as well. We got our spear here. This is the call to the warriors that we need more warriors to step up to the battlefront because Africa is being taken by Arabs, by Chinese, by everybody you can imagine. And all the conscious people, all the African people are there in Crackerville, up in Walmart, the same Walmart that the Cracker is in. They're in the same Facebook that the Cracker is in. So we have to wonder the consciousness that we have, if it's not manifesting in our day-to-day actions, then what good is it? The one who's read 1,000 books and the one who's read 0 books are in the same Whole Foods and whatever else. So to create our own, let's start with the processes to create the communities where we are. Start with 10 people, move to 100 people, move to 1,000 people, and then interconnect those communities, those who are here, those who are in Namibia, those who are in Kenya, those who are in Spain. And once we interconnect those communities, that is now the foundation of the nation that we would like to see in the world. And that nation is called Kemet, and it's here again to fight against Rome, global Rome, all these crackers throughout the world.
All right. There it is. Thank you, brother. We're going to move on now to where that all came from. Baba Kamal Kambon. Baba Kamal, are you with us?
Yeah, Black Liberation, brother.
Black Liberation, Baba.
Good. I'd like to thank the architects and the designers of this platform, the Black psychologists, Dr. Wade Nobles, Sister Jamila, Dr. Anthony Smith, Nataki Kambon, and Mawiyah Kambon. I hope I didn't miss anyone, but this has been a magnificent effort to bring Black people together. Marcus Garvey said, everything we do is political. So when we look at this global dynamic called the world, what is going on is genocide is at the top of the list. Ted Turner wrote an article or was interviewed in '93 where he said the ideal population of the planet Earth is between 250 and 350 million people. So genocide is in effect. Self-hatred among Africans has been in effect. And subtle suicide, where we destroy ourselves in many different ways. But since COVID, what is going on now is what Nana Kwame Obale says is de-whitenization. So the idea is that although genocide is going on, what we must do is to de-whitenize. We have a theme that we have different selves, S-C-L-V-E-S. We have a psychological self, a historical self, an economic self, an education self, a health self, a spiritual self, a social self, a political self, a mathematical self, a science self, a technology self, a matter self, a motion self, a space self, and a time self. We have 15 different cells that comprise this one body. And so what we have to do is to get all of our different cells together. And we do this by de-whitenizing. What does de-whitenize mean? It means to seek to delete and eject and reject white concepts and white actions.
Okay, we got some kind of interference. So please mute themselves. LB, please mute yourself. LB, please mute yourself. My brother Kwadwo, if we can get LB's microphone turned off, please.
Okay, so the idea is that each individual, in order to reach the apex that Nana Kwame talked about, building a nation, people can't come to the nation in a toxic state. So they can't be conscious psychologically, but spiritually be at the lowest level possible. You know, backstabbing, cheating, being a deceiver, etc. So we have to try to work to de-whitenize, get all of our different cells together. And we do that by exercising our will, because the white will has been superimposed upon us. So we have to exercise our own will. We have to wrench back our own mind. This is part of de-whitenizing. In addition to that, we have to stop acting white-ish. We have to decide to stop killing our different selves. And then in addition to that, we have to protect and save each self by organizing a personal plan for each self. And then we have to really try to bring about strong self-discipline in order to fortify this effort to de-whitenize. And once we de-whitenize, then we can re-Africanize in the areas that I just outlined. We can re-Africanize, meaning Sankofa, go back and fetch the important concepts and ideas that are throughout the African continent. And once we go back, though, to look at these concepts and ideas and formulas, we have to look at them in terms of how they can benefit us. And then once we can look at them, how they can benefit us, then we bring them forward and look at them in contextual, real-time reality. Meaning we just can't go back and grab everything, but we have to examine them, look at them closely on a microscopic level, and then see how they can benefit us. And then once we can do that, then we can move to being more authentic, more fluid, and more organic as a race of people. And this, in my estimation, is what we need to do. In essence, is to purify ourselves and download, delete, and eject all of these white concepts and actions in order for us to move forward into the next area of our development as a race of people.
All right, Asante Sana Baba. I really appreciate that. And of course, we're going to take a short break now.
Well, I want to speak on Pam Africa because she was going to try to get with us. This week, as you mentioned in her bio, she has been very busy working on Mawiyah Bull getting out of prison. And her role in coming here was not only to help us understand that, but to also help us understand the plight of Black prisoners. We have probably as many Black men and women in prison, but particularly Black men, as we have on the outside. And that was her role in coming here. She has done a conference this week around Mawiyah up in Philly, which has been very successful, and she was going to, her part was from 12 to 4 today. And she wanted to be here. She was going to try to get out, but that couldn't happen. But we will hear from her again because this is not the last time we will do this. But, you know, she would always say, on the move.
Indeed, Asante Sana. We're going to now move on to Dr. Jamila Codrington with another message. Dr. Jamila, are you there? And again, as we wait for Dr. Jamila to join us.
Dr. Anthony could speak until she comes.
Sure. Dr. Anthony Smith, are you ready?
Yes. Again, we're going to be launching this 10-day initiative, and we're going to have different activities for folks to do every day. And one of those things is going to be tapping into spirit. One of those things is going to be dancing. We're going to have activities and exercises for people to do so that we can get back to being about family. One of the things that this situation, this pandemic has done is caused a lot of grief, a lot of frustration, a lot of sadness, a lot of anxiety. And so one of the things we want to do is launch a counter against that, to help us recognize and remember who we are, that we have gifts, that we have talent, that we have an ability to use this time to connect with each other and understand who each other are and lift each other up. Everything that we can think about, if you look around your room right now, every single thing you see came out of somebody's head. Everything, including the building that you're in. We have the power and the capacity to create those same things ourselves. So we want to create an opportunity for us to use this time to begin thinking about not the sad and the horrible parts of this pandemic, but about what we're going to be doing to create excellence moving forward. Even this event right here would not have been created if not for this pandemic, right? So excellence is coming even if we don't appreciate it. And if we're constantly looking forward, we can take that spirit of our ancestors and do some wonderful, great things. So again, we want you to participate. We're going to have things that we want people to do at the same time every day, so that that collective energy is going out into the universe at 12 p.m. Eastern, or whatever the times are that we have listed. We try to do it in a way that people can tap in and not be inconvenienced. But we want people to really participate in this, send it out, let other people know, so that collectively we begin moving this energy forward and doing the work, practically doing the work, and not just theorizing about it. theory is good, but then we have to get to the practice part of it. And this is a template for doing the practice.
Yeah, well. All right, so we're going to move on now to culture and spirituality. And we're going to wrap it up there, and then we're going to have, of course, some reflections afterwards. Right now, we're going to be joined by Professor James Small, born on the Arcadia Plantation in Georgetown, South Carolina, traces his roots from enslaved Africans of the Akan, Ewe, and Yoruba peoples of West Africa. He is also descended from the Chikora Nation. Although Malcolm X had already died, Professor Small joined and took leadership in Malcolm's OAAU after moving to New York. He would eventually become the bodyguard of Malcolm's sister and the imam of Malcolm's mosque in Harlem, New York. He has done many things, including being an initiate in the priesthood of the Yoruba tradition, and continues to fight for the liberation of our people. Professor Baina Bello of Haiti immerses herself in African deep thought. She loves history and is committed to restore the truth to Haitian history. Through education, she's lived around the globe, contributing her vast love of the quest for truth, and she centers around the construction of Marie Claire, the foundation called the Félicité for historical research, and she's with us as well. Also, Dr. Wade Nobles, for over 4 decades, he has studied classical African philosophy from Kemet, Twa, Nubian, and traditional African wisdom traditions from the Akan to the Yoruba, Bantu, Wolof, Dogon, Pom, Lebu, etc., as the grounding for development of the authentic black psychology. Dr. Nobles is a founding member of the Association of Black Psychologists and a former national president, professor emeritus of Africana Studies and Black Psychology at San Francisco State University, and the author of over 100 articles, chapters, research reports, and books. Defines power as the ability to define reality and to have others respond to your definition as if it were your own. And the most important reality to define is the meaning of one's own human beingness. Many of us have heard that before. So we want to welcome our next group of Africans to this forum. So greetings.
Greetings. And I think we'd like to start with Mama Baina.
Dr. Baina, go right ahead. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Greetings to all. This is a time for connecting tighter to our ancestors. This is a time for us to go deeper into ourselves, to stop running, stop going out, looking what they are doing, what they are saying, and especially repeating what they are saying. It's time for us to go in, to really go within ourselves, to touch, to talk, to make love to the divine in us. Because ultimately, it makes no difference what people do, what attack. We could easily say 1,000 years history, probably more, of people trying to destroy us. And they have failed thus far. And they will continue to fail. But why? How come? We often see ourselves in situations where those who attack us have so much, and then we are empty-handed, but yet we come out victorious. How come? Our weapons are inside of us. Trust yourself. Go within. Study your ancestors. As I look at this situation, I look at some elements of Haitian history. I look at the Battle of Kretapio. We were less than 1,000 Haitians in a fort, attacked by 12,000 French soldiers well armed and well fed. They said they would crush us in less than a half hour. That's what their general said, in a half hour it'll be over. Well, they took 22 days, and still they were unable to crush us. Ultimately, we came out and destroyed quite a bit of their 12,000 men. So, no weapons, no food, no water. Where was the strength? The strength is within. We must take more time to study our own power. And that will give us the confidence to see in our environment what we need. So, my message to one and all.
We'll get a few minutes. If we could ask Dr. Nobles if you could please mute yourself.
My message to one and all. Take the time to tap within. Don't repeat what people are saying. Don't get into the game of their numbers and what's going to happen, what will. No, no, no. Go within and be convinced that you will walk through this desert and come out victorious. You, your family, your community, your nation. Trust yourself. Healing has to be, healing is within. We must trust ourselves. We must look. Know yourself, and you will know the universe and all its gods. Know yourself. You will know the universe and all its gods. So that means what? Ultimately, the universe is in you. The gods are in you. So if you're always outside looking for somebody's solution, you will not survive. You must trust yourself. Trust your environment. Trust the trees, the plants, the water, the sun. Communicate with them. As you walk through anything, know that you created it all, and you will come through whatever is in front of you. You'll walk through it. You'll walk over it, and you will be victorious. Trust yourself. Thank you.
Ashe, Ashe. So in other words, we have everything we need, and we really appreciate that message, Mama. It said it before the cock crowed, after, during, it was all good. So let's move on now to Dr. Wade Nobles. Dr. Nobles, thank you for joining us.
Very good. I want to thank you, and I want to reiterate what I said to Nana Mawiyah, that putting me on a panel with Bayana and Professor Smalls, I just need to sit here and look like I'm the flower on the wall, because you have the genius in front of you. I want to add a couple of things that I think are important, and you introduced me with my now infamous definition of power, which is power's ability to find reality and have other people respond to our definition as if it were their own. It is a question of power in terms of how do you understand this reality. And the first reality defined, the most important reality defined, is the meaning of being human. And so I want to start there, because this panel on speaking to culture and spirituality has to be reframed to look at what it is to be human. And I'm offering as a consideration that we are not human beings, that we are spirit beings, and that spirit energy vibrates in everything that is knowable and known. So as Bayana was saying, we are the universe. We are God. It's not in us. We are it. In fact, the language we use is so important. And so I want to invite all of us to start looking at every single word, every single construct we use. How does it serve us? How does it reflect us? And I want to go back to my grandmother, who used the word dim. she would say, Wade, go down and get them kids and bring them up here. She would say, dim, dim, dim. And even Naim Akbar referred to my colleagues as Wade and dim. Think for a minute, what is dim? Dim is not a mispronunciation of them. Dim is a signifier of who we are. We are divine energy made manifest. That's dim. We are divine energy made manifest. So we are God expressing itself. If we take that issue, that idea, and look at this pandemic, we should not be talking about the pandemic and all its radiation and all the airborne disease, but look at this pandemic as a stimulus for us to radiate ourselves beyond any crises. We are vibrating, radiating energy. That's what it means to be a spirit being, vibrating, radiating energy. So even the concepts we use, like we're not talking about nations. How do we get an African nation? Maybe, and I politely suggest, maybe that's the wrong construct. It is not nation, but peoplehood. How do we have a worldwide African people that has no boundary, that has no nation, that has no need to have a passport, because wherever Africans are, that's our people. And so how do we talk about peoplehood and personhood? How do we look at the technology of creating the environment that satisfies spirit beings? And there's the technology here, the technology of human production. How do we produce God in the form of being human? How do we produce food production that is in the form of advancing and enlightening our spiritness? How do we produce shelter? How do we produce security? How do we produce wellness? These are questions that we should be talking about, thinking about, developing about, not because we're in a pandemic, but because we're going to go beyond the pandemic. We are going to be able to be spirit beings for eternity. That's how we began this conversation. Our ancestors stood up in the world and said, I am, I be, and that in being, I'm going to be more better. And the way I be more better is to produce all that I need to create this. That's the focus in spiritness, not spirituality. I want to offer you a consideration. Stop using the word spirituality when it refers to African people. We should be talking about spiritness, being spirit, not having a quality of spirit. We be spirit. So spiritness, I offer you to consider that as a construct that we use because it reminds us of who we are and whose we are. We are vibrating energy. We are powerful. We are this idea that we, in fact, can say it so. That's what our ancestors created when we talk about nomo, the power of the word. I can speak it. Our ancestors, the Bakongo, have a term called spoken medicine that is me impovo inkizi. I can speak myself well. I can speak myself. Now, I want the audience to get all crazy and get sort of fantasizing here. I'm talking about real power, the power to use energy, force, to in fact invoke ourselves. That's what our ancestors were doing in Haiti when they were at that in the alligator swamp. They called down the energy and then defeated the most powerful military force in the world, the French. And we need to call out our energy to defeat this pandemic, but also to reframe and reconstruct and reinvent the environment that we will walk in the world as we did before, as God. And we will do that being people, not being nations. We will do that being people, not being citizens. We will do that because we have a responsibility for each other and not a right to do something. See, the Western model has got us in the wrong language, so we got to go back, if I may, and conclude with this, with interrogating the language and logic of being African. What's the language and logic of being African? How do I stand upright? My telephone just helped you with giving you a being said my time is up. My telephone didn't do that. It ain't that kind of a smartphone, but the fact of the matter is that I'm going to come to a conclusion that our culture, just in the culture of those Africans who define themselves as African American people, has at least 54 different features that we should be providing our children with so they can begin to understand how I walk in the world. How do I stand up and radiate? if I say, again, using the Congo, when we say this term, buka mukati, ya buka kumbazi, buka mukati, ya buka kumbazi, it says divine in me, the power in me, the spirit in me, heal the inside, and I will heal the outside. So when we're confronted with racism, we're confronted with white supremacy, we're confronted with all these isms that are killing our people, we have to talk, spirit talk. We have to be spirit beings, and we should have our children be able to stand up in the environments of hostile, negative, deviant, vulgar environments called educational systems. And when that teacher says you cannot learn black boy, you cannot learn black girl, they can stand upright and say, buka mukati ya buka kumbazi. Tell that white teacher, my spirit inside will take care of me. I'm going to deal with you. I'm going to deal with you. When we go to war, we should think about we are doing psychological war, but we engage in war. We don't engage in that worried about, as our ancestors in Haiti did, worried about they got all the guns, they got all the ships, they got all the cannon. We said, I'm going to be free and African. Buka mukati, ya buka kumbazi. We got to use our ancient African technology to live through this pandemic and go beyond the pandemic and walk as we've always walked as the people who are the owners of eternity.
I say we be spirit nest. I like that. I like that. We got something that we can use, something that can help us to heal. Let us know that we are the divinity. We are manifest that. We're moving on now to Mama Mawiyah Kambon. She's going to be joining us and giving us the word as well. Mama.
I choose to use my spiritness at this time as Nana Afia. It's almost I should just sit and drink the spiritness of my brothers and sister here. Yet Spirit has called me to speak about, we knew this was coming. This had been told us almost 20 years ago. We did not know it would be this, but this devastation against us, we knew what was coming. And we were told to prepare. And some of us...
What I faced it.
Nataki. And some of us did that, in that we started learning about those energies that were given us, that serve us, that we serve, to raise ourselves up to a higher level. What is that level? The level of being spirit, walking spirit. This is just a vessel that we share for a very short time. But as I was listening the other day to Baba, Professor Smalls, and my sister Baina, they talked about how within our veins we carry the generations and generations of our people, our ancestors. So there is nothing that we can't do. And I recall my husband and I saying that to our children in their ears while they slept as babies, that there is nothing that you can't do, because they have hundreds of thousands of years of ancestor blood that runs through their veins. Those that did, not just talked it, but did the do. And so I ask, and I'm going to make mine short because we do want to hear Professor Small. I ask that people do several things. One, honor your ancestors. Create an altar to them. You don't have to buy things. You can go out, if you have earth, go out near a tree, or in your home, just create a space where you can go and listen and talk to them. In my work as a psychologist, I encourage meditation. Meditation in our spirit work is what we do to be able to listen to the spirit speak with us and guide us. It is talk, which some call prayer, that we do when we want them to hear us. Indeed, they are with us wherever we are, no matter what we do. But they have been waiting for us to call on them. As Baba said, this war that we face, that is here now, can be defeated because we are the chosen people. We just have to know that. So I ask our brothers and our sisters who are not getting along at this time in their homes to look in. I don't use this word often, but so that you understand, look into your God self, into your spirit self, and understand that you are, as my Baba Wade says, more better than the trauma and the tragedy and the pain and the suffering that this COVID has brought you to. Use it as an opportunity to find that greatness within, that spirit self within, that can and will guide you to freedom, personally and for us collectively. And so with that, I say, move forward. Let us continue to heal, because we are the answer that we've been waiting for.
Ashe, Ashe. And we're going to now move on to Baba James Small. Baba Small, are you with us? Just wrapping up in just a few moments, but we do want to hear from our last presenter, Professor James Small, who many of you all know has been featured in many documentaries and interviews and so on and so forth. And I think Mama Mawiyah, as you can see, is in the background getting ready to have him come on. Wanted to also say thank you once again, Asante Sana, Jared Jeff, to everybody, Madasi, everybody for staying with us. I know this has been a long 3 hours, and then it's been a very quick one too, because so much information to move along. We have definitely had a lot on our plate. So again, I embellish you all, implore you all to go to blacktherapycentral.com so that you can get more information and get more in depth. We just really wanted to just give folks a taste of what we have available to us as resources. And we are our own resource. And that's pretty much been the theme that's been taking place over the past 3 hours or so, that we have the God force within us. We are, as Baba Wekesa just said, he said it's well worth the time with Asante Sana Baba. We have everything we need. And sometimes in this culture, I didn't present, but one of the things I was going to say is that media directs the narrative very often. And we have to be very mindful of that and understand that the things that they are telling us are not necessarily the truth. And we know that. And at the same time, when we imbibe that liquor known as the media, what happens is we get intoxicated by its poison. So what we have to learn to do is to turn it off, because we're not going to learn anything new, particularly around the COVID, except to be afraid. And when one is afraid, when people are afraid, they are much more easily manipulated, much more malleable. Fear is like a fire to an iron smelter. You know, the fire, you know, makes the metals malleable, makes the metals more open to be formed and crafted into a certain form. Whatever form that the iron smelter has in mind is what's going to happen in terms of that fire. So what I say is to turn the fire off and create your own fire, because we have a kiln of our own. And those of us in the spiritual systems, we know there's all kinds of things that we can do with that. And so those of you who know, you know. If not, go to go to the website and find out for all these resources that we have, blacktherapycentral.com, and you can find out more. I want to know now if Baba Small is with us.
I would like to thank Sister Naika Kambon and Dr. Mawiyah Kambon for me into the State of Emergency Global Black Community Town Hall meeting that's dealing with Black unity and healing. And I want to make my contribution. I'm Professor James Small, in case you missed the name, and I'm looking at culture and spirituality. But I'd like to make my contribution by reading a definition of culture by one of my former professors from Nigeria, Professor Akintunde, an extraordinary teacher, and he wrote this wonderful book. It's called Milestones and Social Systems in Yoruba History and Culture. And his name is I.A. Akintunde. Very important book. But what I want to read is Professor Akintunde's definition of culture, because his definition of culture just hits the spot. Dr. Akintunde says, in actual fact, culture consists of all the items in the life of a group of human beings which make them to feel belonging to one another. Listen to that again. Which makes them to feel belonging to one another, distinct from any other group around them. It comprises their language, their religion, their dress, their social system, their economic system, their food, their leisure, their medical and technological knowledge, and so on and so forth. He goes further and he says, culture is not static. It is dynamic. Certain items that are no longer useful at a particular period in a particular culture can be discarded and are usually discarded in favor of new items that would suit the circumstances of the time. And I think that's a good definition. What I would add to that, given what he said, is what Dr. Marimba Ani says. And what Dr. Ani says is that it is culture that protect the people from genocide. Dr. Asa Hilliard, our great ancestors, taught us that it is culture that is the tool that carry on intergenerational transmission of the group's wisdom. And so when we are talking about healing and spirituality and culture, you know, spirituality is at the core of the culture. And we won't truly understand spirituality in its fullest sense unless we really understand the nature of ancestry. You know, when my mother gave birth to me, she gave birth to herself and my father. When my grandparents, the four of them, gave birth to my mother and father, they gave birth to themselves. And when my great-parents, the 8 of them, gave birth to my 4 grandparents, they too were giving birth to themselves. So in the African spiritual culture, I am the continuum of the first member of my family ever to be manifest from the divine as human. In that regards, my family branched off of the first African woman who was the first manifestation of cosmology and ecology as a human being. Thus, I am the great umpteen times grandson of God itself. And so that's clear. If you want to understand African culture, it is the culture of godness. Here's what I mean by that. African culture is a phenomena that our ancestors kept replicating and trying to manifest the divine essence in themselves. They saw each living thing as an expression of an aspect of the divine having the human experience. Thus, they saw our destiny in all of its peculiarity as trying to manifest that, to perfect the divine in you. And that can only be done if you have a harmonious and a balanced relationship with the ecology and the cosmology that you're a part of. And that means you have to develop wisdom schools using metaphor and folklore and dance and music and other kinds of rituals to teach the concepts, the ideas, and principles of how the universe works, how nature and its ecology work, how the human being and its ecology work, and what was the relationship between the three. And our rituals and our cultures and our cultural institutional tools, because dance is not culture, music is not culture, drama, theater is not culture. These are the tools of culture. Culture is the concepts, ideas, and principles that our ancestors discerned from observation of ecology and cosmology over millennia. And how do we take those rules and concepts we learn? We use them to create our social construct so that we relate to each other as human beings in the same manner as the rest of the universe relates to each other. In this partnership of harmony and balance, of cause and effect. And so it's these rules that we must learn. That is the body wisdom of the ancestors. You know, the Igbos call them in the Yoruba, call them their odus, their verses of wisdom, which they try to teach by using the anthropomorphic symbolisms of the principles, concepts, and ideas that we call orishas, so that we can learn to appreciate the qualities and attributes in nature and to recognize similar quality and attributes in ourselves. And as we watched how nature developed its qualities and attributes, we learn to develop our qualities and attributes in partnership with nature and in partnership with one another, so that we can create institutions. And all of our institutions and their peculiarities, a replica of these universal principles, concepts, and ideas that we call forces of nature, or we call orishas. Or in the Voodoo system, we call them loas. In the Akan system, we call them obosun. In the ancient Kemetic system, we call them the Neteru. And so when we talk yourself, in essence, you are the very ancestors you pour libation to in their leap forward. When I gave birth to my children, I gave birth to myself. So that when this temple, that this body of energy that I call me lives in, dies, I've already established multiple other temples that carry multiple aspects of my being forward. As I've came forward with multiple aspects, as that one of the aspects, of my parents and my other siblings, 13 of us, represents other aspects of those same parents. And yet all of us have the possibility of the totality of both parents. And when we look at the elements that make us up, the minerals, the elements, and so forth, they're the same things we find in nature. When we get hungry after depleting through work, probably millions of cells, we don't eat other human beings to replenish ourselves. We eat everything else in nature. So we are everything else in nature. Compose and transpose in its own peculiar way. So when we talk about culture, we're really talking about African sacred science. When we talk about spirituality, we're really talking about African sacred science. And this wasn't a hit and miss thing. We had an oral tradition and a written tradition going back beyond any other civilization in the world in producing those methodologies of transferring wisdom from one generation to another, from one element of society to another. The whole idea in the African culture is that everyone in the community understood the ecology in the same way. That everyone in the community, whether he was the sheep herder, whether he was the farmer, whether he was the fisherman, whether he was the person that dug the viaducts, whether he was the house builder, the role of those we call priests, and we didn't use that, the word Africans use, and none of our language meant priests. The only thing that can come close to what they meant is scholar, or wisdom scholars, people who we would now call persons with PhD and masters. Those were the people who had mastered the wisdom of the universe, or mastered an aspect of the wisdom of the ecology, And together they tried to find ways to transfer that body of information to the everyday man and woman who did not have time to indulge in that kind of deep study, so that the community would work in harmony and balance. And that institutions that they created would reflect these laws of nature and would reflect the laws of the universe, and that those laws that govern nature and govern the universe, when we have our inward and reflection, we realize those are the same laws that govern us, the human being. And so we want to learn those laws and use them to create the artificial social ecology that we live in, and use the process of socialization to continue to transfer that body of wisdom, especially intergenerationally. So when we're talking about culture, it's not a little thing. And I think it'd be better if we move away from the concept of dealing with culture without describing the difference between the tools of culture and the ideas of culture. And at the same time, knowing that at the core of your culture is what we call our spiritual system, or what should more appropriately be called the system of African sacred science, the body wisdom that has been accumulated over millions of years. And since we know we are matter and energy, we can prove all of that. We know that we have electrical circuits in our bodies that attend to the functioning and keeping the energy going. We call that spirit or soul or both. But we have not, in this perverted culture we find ourselves in, have not been able to properly manage the system that we are. In Africa, we manage that system. And it comes down to the food you eat, how you keep your body healthy through exercise and other activities. All of those things are part of your spiritual system. They're not something separate from it. Your diet is a part of your spiritual system. Your exercise motif is a part of your spiritual system. Your thinking processes is a part of your spiritual system. Your mental construct, which comes from your application of the rules of socialization to your ecology, is a part of your spiritual system. So I know I may have gone over time, but that is the time that I wanted to give to the State of Emergency Global Black Community Town Hall meeting today. And again, I'd like to thank Black Unities and healers and those who have stand up for the psychological rebalancing of African people. See, we can never be psychology, which is the generator for our spiritual essence. The political victories, we've won many. The economic victories, we've won many. And the reason our wheels are still spinning, because we have not won the cultural and spiritual victories we need to win, because those are the glue and the instructor and the informer of the economics and the politics. So thank you again. I hope I've been able to contribute something worthy, and I'll see y'all the next time.
And so I'd like for our Baba Wade, we have two female energies here. And the importance of female energy is to understand that the woman needs to be held in her highest regard. She is the first mother, she is the first teacher, she is the giver of life. But we could not do that without the support of our brothers around us. So she must be free of pain and suffering so that she can do her job. To nurture, to teach, to heal. And with that, I want us to close out this spirituality, please, Baba, by you coming back in, Baba Wade, and just bringing it full circle.
I'm not sure what you mean by full circle, but there is an unbroken circle, and that. But I did want to resonate with something you just said, Mawiyah, which is that the feminine energy is primary and paramount, and because we have been, our minds have been shattered by a Western narrative, we see male and female as conflictual in a contractual relationship. Male and female are not in a contractual relationship. Male and female are in a complementary relationship that requires wholeness. And so we who have manifested as masculine have a responsibility to open the way so that the feminine can do what it is supposed to do, which is to nurture and to gender the best of ourselves. And so there's a natural divine relationship between masculine and feminine, and we can't get caught up in, again, the Western modality of our gender being a physical definition. Our gender is an expression or a manifestation of our oneness and spiritness. And we should begin to talk about how we define roles, how we define relationships, how we define responsibilities that are designated as being primary for one of those, end quote, gender or another. Remember, gender is rooted in generation, and generation means to produce. And so together through Genesis, and I want people to knee-jerk into biblical terms of Genesis, but there is Genesis in every cultural community. How do we generate our own? How do we regenerate the best of our own? How do we, if I can use a term that Jamila said in past the other day, is that how do we shape shift to our ancestors? How do we shape shift to the past? And how do we shape shift to the future? That is required with the relationship of masculine, feminine, and complementarity. But I'll close with the feminine is primary and paramount. That doesn't mean that the masculine is secondary. It means that the feminine is primary and paramount, and reproduction requires the connection between feminine and masculine, where the spirit is defined in different ways. My sperm is physical spirit, and my sperm entering into the woman is a relationship of love. At least it should be a relationship of love that then produces the being that we now cherish as our offspring.
Indeed, indeed. Very powerful message, Baba. And it's very important that we understand our culture and what all of that means in terms of the roles of masculine and feminine. Yes. Other people, we can leave all that other stuff, all them other categories of other people. We don't have to get involved in that. We know our way, and that's the best roadmap for us. And we talked about Sankofa quite a bit, and our way is just what you just laid out, and we understand that fully, and we're going to move forward. Does anyone have any questions? I know we have. You've had a lot to digest today. Maybe there's something that resonates with you all. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask them and pose them right now. We're getting ready to wrap up, so just giving you an opportunity, as we said in the very beginning and all throughout, that we're going to have opportunities for folks to ask questions. Let's see, what is our action plan going forward? Action plan going forward.
Well, I think we do have an action plan if we really heard what was being said today. What we did talk about was solutions to the condition we're in. And sometimes in our pain, it is sometimes difficult for us to hear. And we understand that. So it is not an indictment that something didn't come out of this session for you today. But I encourage you, because we will have this video, that you look at all your different cells, as Baba Kamal talks about, and find out which is the lowest energy you've got, and build that energy up so it can meet your strongest energy and to be able to move forward. So Baba Hekima and Nataki talked about creating systems, which they have done. Baba Wekesa and Dr. Kwaw and Bashea talked about creating education, which has been done. So it is not in every place, in every city. But this platform is to help us know that it exists and that there are opportunities for us to seek out and for those of us to reach out to our people to help bring us all to the place where we are healing together, because we are only as strong as the weakest one. And if there is nothing here that you found that can resonate with your spirit, then I encourage anyone who knows Sister Laurel to reach out to her and to help her just climb one step higher.
And I would also add, too, that in addition to what Mama said, there are plans here. Sheikh Anta Diop had a plan. Chancellor Williams had a plan, as somebody just reminded us in the chat. Dr. Clark had a plan in one of his major works as well. Baba Kambon has a plan. So we have several folks who have plans.
May I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead, Baba.
If I can. I want to remind us that we are the plan. And it's not going to look for someone else's plan. We are the plan. And what we should be doing is rescuing those ideas. Ideas are the substance of behavior. So rescue those African ideas that shape-shift our behavior to be as elegant, as powerful as we can be. Create instruments, if I may, that we have it. Mawiyah has it. We created a workbook for families to use to talk about creating games and dances and thoughts and actions while we are sheltering in space. So we should be giving our community tools that ignite their plan, which is inside them already. And if we can do that, then we've answered the call of the ancestors.
Indeed. And we have
Kaba, in closing, we want to talk about where we go next. And this may be able to help not only that sister, but others. Because, yes, we are the plan, and we have been working because we love us. And we have been concerned about us staying in place. So as Baba mentioned, we will have this workshop link up. But over the next 10 days, starting tomorrow, we have a 10-day global journey of healing that we want you to participate in. And if Baba Anthony could come in with the principles, because I don't have them in front of me. Baba Anthony, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you please line out the principles and what the 10-day global plan is?
Okay. And Dr. Codrington was here, too. She's going to do the first 5, and I was going to do the second 5.
Okay. Dr. Codrington?
Yes, I'm here. Peace, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So as Mama Mawiyah has professed, we are our own liberators. We are our own healers. But we must come clothed in the richness of our African tradition. So our 10-day healing process is focused on reclaiming an African principle of healing. And in African tradition, we are taught to cleanse. Day 1 is all about cleansing. We cleanse our mind, we cleanse our body, we cleanse our heart, and we cleanse the physical space around us. We are able to re-Africanize when we are in the right frame of mind, body, and spirit. So we get ourselves there in day 1. Day 2, we move forward with a day of gratitude and giving of thanks. So we have to privilege our legacy, we have to privilege our ancestors, we have to privilege the Most High, and our elders. Those are the individuals and the spirit forces that have carried us through. And our power lies in our ability to connect with that. So that is day 2, a day of gratitude and giving thanks. Day 3 is a day of joy. We restore joy as African people to our lives, particularly because we are dealing with a season of a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. But we also know of our legacy of resilience, and we connect with that. And we also know we are building for the future. Day 4 is Kaumba, creativity. We have a creative ingenuity, a genius around how to make something out of nothing. And we bring that to this COVID season. We bring our ability to be resourceful and to understand that we can be innovative when we are in a shelter-at-home situation. And day 5 is forgiveness. And this is not just the forgiveness of those elements outside of ourselves that connect to the oppression and all of the racial disparities that we're seeing as we manage COVID, but it's forgiveness also of ourselves, understanding that we are not here to be always functioning at our highest frequency, but sometimes we have to forgive ourselves for not being okay, for not living up to our standards, and also forgiving ourselves for the things that we hold ourselves accountable for in our own expectations. And so day 5 is forgiveness. Brother Anthony.
So day 6, and I should just say that each of these days, we're giving you a brief overview right now, but each of these days will have proverbs and affirmations that go with the day. They will have things that we'll talk about to frame the day, and we'll have activities that we'll want you to do on those days to actually apply the concept of that day. So day 6 is disconnecting and reconnecting. And in doing that, we want you to back away from the media, back away from all the social online news, all of those memes. Just detox from that and allow yourself to find a place of peace. Because when we keep ingesting a lot of garbage, it weighs us down. So we're in the process of healing, so we want to get push ourselves away from that. Day 7 is dealing with ancestral veneration. We are a spirit people, and we always have to stay connected with those whose shoulders we stand on. So we want to take a day where we really honor and allow us to connect with our ancestors in a way that's very powerful and very positive, that engenders that energy so that they can whisper in our ears and give us the messages of how we need to create, how we need to build. So that's day 7. Day 8, we're going to focus on family. And, so one of the activities we're going to have people doing is dancing and coming up with family songs, right? We are family, and all the energy of what that really means. So we're going to focus on family as our nucleus and appreciate that it's not just a biological family, it's our collective family, which we know we got many cousins and brothers and sisters. We have family that is beyond just the nuclear definition of what family is. So we're going to focus on that. Day 9, following our line, following in the footsteps that are in the sands, those who have laid the pathway before, ahead of us. And we're going to focus on understanding what those footprints are about and walking in them so that we can tap back into that genius that they provided for us. And day 10 is a day of binging, not in the negative sense, but in the positive sense. So we want to binge in terms of distancing ourselves from the negativity, but then focusing on the positive. So one of the activities for that day is watching the movie Sankofa, so that it reminds us of what it means to go back and bring our best forward, and to find other positive films and music of that nature that we're going to binge on goodness that reaffirms and recalibrates us. And again, as I said, all of this is going to be in a lot more detail. We just want to give you a brief overview right quick. Tomorrow, this will be on the website. We want you to link in, look at these days, look at the framing, look at the activities, and engage them with as many people as possible so that we can do the work to move ourselves forward.
And we are also, just one last thing, Baba Wade has reframed music as spoken medicine, and we understand the healing power of music and raising our vibrational energy. So we have used this 10-day healing journey to present to you a musical playlist, the spoken medicine playlist, to assist you on your journey.
Yes, indeed. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Does anybody else have anything to share?
Yes, I want to close out now. That we have this Mbongi, and for people who don't know what that term is, Certainly you will see it in the workbook that Baba Wade has sent forward, or the spirits have sent forward through him. And Mbongi is a place where people come and gather their collective energies to resolve any issues and to come forth from that Mbongi with a greater understanding of purpose. So in this, I first want to give acknowledgement and credit to my daughter Nataki, who's on screen right now, who came to me with this idea of the Black Therapy Central Network and asked me to help, to pull it together so that I could have a place to disseminate the kinds of ideas that come through me. Because I know that I don't exist alone, I asked my brothers and sisters, who also happen to be part of our ABSI family, Association of Black Psychologists family, if they would join me in creating the content, as you will, to spirit fill this journey. And so the Mbongi consists of Baba Wade Nobles, Nana Berku, of Dr. Jamila Codrington, who you've heard from, Dr. Anthony Smith, who you've heard from. You haven't heard from Dr. Afia Mbilishaka because this morning her husband's grandfather is making his transition and they had to leave to go to New Jersey. But she is also a part. So we have this in Mbongi, but we also have people, because of the kind of familyhood we have, who also participated, and I want to call their names out. So we had Okanini Obadele Kambon to find the proverbs and to find the symbols that would match each one of those days. We had Sister Kala to seek throughout the continent people and to inform people on the continent about this day so that it truly could be a global presence. And we are grateful for Baba Kaba, who agreed to take from his time with his children on this day to moderate this. But perhaps the one you don't see most is the one who's dealing with all this technical. We have not been Zoom bound as others have been, because in the background is our brother Kwadwo from bbtumi.com, who has been filtering and finding the negative ones who would want to destroy this and have kept them from bombing us. So in the final words, I want us to know, using Baba, two things. You want to say something before I finish, Nataki?
I do.
Okay.
Just so you can still have the final words. I do want to invite everyone, this challenge, the 11-day healing challenge is, say it again?
10 days.
10 days.
Excuse me, the 10-day healing challenge is really powerful, and want to invite everyone to actually go to the website now. You can go to Black Therapy Central and click on the COVID-19, and you can read just the introduction that the Black Therapy Central team, who is comprised of Dr. Mawiyah Kambon at the helm, Baba Wade Nobles, Dr. Afia Mbilishaka, who's our millennial powerhouse representative, Dr. Jamila Codrington, and Dr. Anthony Smith, have really, along with the others that you heard, Dr. Obadele Kambon coming up with the proverbs, and Sister Kala coming up with some of the content and just pulling things together. The idea behind the challenge, like she said, is really, if we're talking about this whole emergency, state of emergency, global town hall meeting has given us a lot of steps that we can take to move forward. And this exercise and activity is really some of the healing that we need to do together in order to really implement those steps And so with that, want to invite everyone to go to blacktherapycentral.com, click on the COVID-19 and read the words that were really put together by the whole team, and you can register yourself for that. It's a self-paced activity, but again, invite your friends and family to do it with you. It's so grounding when you begin new things in your life, when you're able to do it with, you know, sometimes it's not our biological family who is our family, sometimes it's community family. And so, again, go, you can register. And for everyone who asked, several people asked, and I just want to acknowledge, yes, resources are available. That's the one of the main functions of this Black Therapy Central site. There will be all kinds of free resources for those who, a lot of people are recognizing the importance of therapy and counseling. You can access those kinds of resources as well. And so in the coming days, you'll get information about all that. But when you click to register on the Black Therapy Central Healing Challenge, you'll get that information.
And so that is important because we know, you know, as the sister said, we want you to leave with resources. We want you to understand that this family is all of us building toward our freedom. And so I want to thank each one of you who has presented today and each one of you who has come today. It is my hope that we all have left this place or leaving this place with more than we came, as Baba would say, becoming more better. And in the spirit of that, oh, I mentioned, I don't know if I did mention Baba Kwadwo behind the scenes. So you don't always see all the goodness, but sometimes we have to wipe away the pain, wipe away the suffering, so we can even see a little bit of strength. We are a resilient people. We have been here for hundreds of thousands of years. We are the chosen people, and we will live. So let the healing continue. And with that, we say, Diye, good night.